Chapter 509. Bai Changchun shuttled through the sword energy like a phantom, looking forward to another surprise from Wen Lanfeng. However, after a long while, when Lanfeng only pressed harder and harder, the surprise he expected did not appear again. Bai Changchun sighed inwardly. It had been a long time since he met an opponent who could satisfy him. It seemed that his expectations were a little too high. With his disappointment, Wen Lanfeng suddenly felt that he could not bear it. Wen Lanfeng sadly realized that he had overestimated himself. Bai Changchun kept dodging not because he was forced to the point that he had no time to make a move, but because he had not made a move all along. It seemed that he was waiting for Wen Lanfeng to unleash his greatest potential. Perhaps he saw that Wen Lanfeng was only this good, so he lost interest in dawdling, and began to counterattack. Bai Changchun's hands, which were originally behind his back, stretched out one of them, and drew an ethereal and unfathomable shadow. Clang! Clang! The sword energy that was like a wild forest could no longer be freely wielded. Bai Changchun shuttled back and forth, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. From time to time, his two fingers would point at the smooth side of the sword energy that swept past, making a series of clanging sounds. When Lanfeng suddenly felt his arms go numb, the sword energy that he wielded seemed to have encountered a heavy resistance, and its speed gradually slowed down. The two people, who were originally so fast that they were like blurry shadows, gradually revealed their true bodies in the air. Even the women in purple could see their every move. Oh no! Nongzhu and ancestor Nanming exclaimed in unison. They could finally be sure that Bai Changchun had been holding back just now. Once he made a move, Wen Lanfeng would not be able to resist. Not to mention Nongzhu. Even ancestor Nanming knew Bai Changchun's temper more or less. Since this guy had decided to go all out, Wen Lanfeng would probably be in danger. Just as Nongzhu and ancestor Nanming were on tenterhooks, a shocking scene appeared. The huge sword energy was no longer entangled with Bai Changchun, and was retracted. Even though Bai Changchun was just casually pointing here and there, Wen Lanfeng really felt that she couldn't take it anymore. If she continued to waste time, she would definitely be exhausted. Wen Lanfeng retracted the huge sword, and held the hilt with both hands. With a ah sound, he quickly slashed at Bai Changchun, giving him a solid blow. The speed and power of this sword naturally didn't need to be said. It had already brought with it the rumbling sound of wind and thunder. Bai Changchun stood quietly in the air, not dodging or evading. The others were shocked. Humph! He let out a cold snort that sounded like a vajra subduing a demon. His tone was full of extreme disdain. This cold snort was simply a great humiliation to Wen Lanfeng. Wen Lanfeng was filled with grief and indignation, but he had nowhere to vent it. He immediately exerted all his cultivation, and infused it into the sword that he slashed out, determined to succeed in one strike. The huge energy sword that howled like thunder launched a thunderous strike with the force to split the heavens and earth. Just as the sword was about to reach his head, Bai Changchun stretched out his hand again. No one saw when he stretched out his hand. The howling came to an abrupt halt. The huge energy sword did not move. It was not moving, but it could not move. Bai Changchun stretched out two fingers, and firmly clamped down on the blade, causing Wen Lanfeng's all-out strike to be unable to advance, even half a step further. His thunderous rage was quelled with just a lift of his hand. Wen Lanfeng pressed on the sword with both hands. His face was red from holding back. Bai Changchun was dressed in a light green robe. His thin face was expressionless. He had one hand behind his back while the other hand clamped down on the huge blade with two fingers. This was the scene in the air. It was obvious who was stronger, and who was weaker at a glance. The spectators did not even dare to breathe loudly. This scene was deeply imprinted in their minds. Hibiscus's mouth was so wide that an egg could be stuffed in it. Her mind was completely blank. Zi crossed her hands in front of her chest. Her eyes were filled with little stars. As expected of Senior Bai, who I've admired since childhood. He's too perfect. Lady Mu bowed slightly in respect. The demon region's torturer was naturally invincible. Otherwise, how could he intimidate thousands of demon kings, and the ghost king? Nongzhu and Patriarch Nanming swallowed with difficulty. How many people in the world could block Wen Lanfeng's thunderous strike, let alone Bai Changchun's freakish move? He actually used his fingers to clamp it. It was indescribable. It was a blatant act of contempt. With extreme disdain, he stretched out 2 fingers. The expression on Wen Lanfeng's face could only be described as infinite grief and indignation. He had gathered all his cultivation into the sword, but it was stopped by the opponent's 2 fingers. The previous fight was like a cat toying with a mouse. This was 100 times worse than the humiliation he had suffered 100 years ago. He had come confidently as soon as he came out of seclusion. It turned out that it was just a self-made joke, the biggest joke in the world. Do you still think you're qualified for me to use my sword now? Bai Changchun asked indifferently with the sword in one hand. I've lost. When Lanfeng spat out those 3 words with difficulty. Didn't you want to test the bottom line of my cultivation? Why did you admit defeat so quickly? Bai Changchun continued to ask mercilessly. Do you remember what I said? What? When Lanfeng asked blankly. Cultivators above the soul formation stage who trespasses into the demon region must die. Bai Changchun reminded in a cold tone. When Lanfeng's pupil shrank, Nongzhu was shocked and said, Old Bai, don't be impulsive. Let's talk. However, how could the current Bai Changchun listen to advice? Another cold snort that sounded like Vajra subduing demons rang out. Without the slightest hesitation, the hand holding the sword pushed forward at lightning speed. When Lanfeng felt a majestic and unparalleled momentum coming from the sword, he could no longer hold the sword with both hands. Bang! The sword hilt hit his abdomen, and the fierce chi went straight to his limbs and bones. Puff! He could not hold back a mouthful of blood. Old Bai, stop! Nongzhu shouted wildly. The others were shocked speechless. The world's #1 expert was going to kill someone. Bai Changchun twisted the 2 fingers that held the sword. The giant silver sword that had escaped from Wen Lanfeng's hand returned to its original shape. It flipped in the air and bounced in the direction of Shuntian Island. Whoosh! Bai Changchun was still in his original position in the air. But another Bai Changchun suddenly appeared in front of Wen Lanfeng. Wen Lanfeng was shocked. Teleportation was useless when he was locked on by such an expert's chi. He quickly covered his body with protective vigor energy. Bai Changchun pointed out 2 more times. The 2 small fingers contained a tremendous force. With a bang, Wen Lanfeng's protective astral energy was shattered. He was sent flying, and with a pu sound, he spat out another mouthful of blood. Wen Lanfeng had just flown back a dozen meters when Bai Changchun, who had been chasing him all the way, arrived in front of him again. There was already a third Bai Changchun in the air. When Lanfeng struggled on his deathbed, he concentrated all his cultivation into a palm strike. At this time, when Lanfeng was already seriously injured, and no longer had the ability to control the residual power of his battle. With this palm strike, the wild momentum rushed out like a stormy sea. Oh no! Ancestor Nan Ming exclaimed. A golden light flashed out of the storage bag, and quickly spread into the sky. The entire obedient island was enshrouded in a golden net. The surging shock wave was blocked by this fine golden net. Shuntian Island was safe and sound. However, the waves on this side of the 1,000-mile lake rose and fell. How could Bai Changchun care about Wen Lanfeng's palm strike? He clenched his fingers into a fist and brazenly punched Wen Lanfeng's palm. Wen Lanfeng spat out another mouthful of blood. His face was pale, and he was sent flying again. The 4th Bai Changchun appeared like the god of death. The 3 phantoms behind him had not dissipated. One could imagine how fast he was. Then he clenched his fist into a palm and slapped Wen Lanfeng's chest. Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly. After suffering 3 consecutive lightning strikes from the sword hilt, a finger and a fist, his body was extremely weak. Especially the last punch, which had scattered the vital essence in his body. He had no ability to resist and could only wait for death. In fact, in this world, how many people could withstand Bai Changchun's 3 lightning strikes? Only Wen Lanfeng, with his profound cultivation, could withstand it. If it were anyone else, they would have been dead. Wen Lanfeng's bitter smile hid a trace of relief. It was not an injustice to die in the hands of the world's #1 expert. When he saw Bai Changchun's cold and handsome face approaching, he recalled the woman with unparalleled beauty in Spirit Fong Valley. Will you occasionally think of me after I die? Farewell, my most beloved woman. What I regret the most in my life is that I couldn't see you again before coming here. 2 drops of crystal-clear liquid gushed out of the corners of Wen Lanfeng's eyes. He actually thought of Lu Yanqing before he died. Nan Ming, **CK your ancestors. Nongzhu climbed the golden net and howled at the sky. His hands that were holding the net were already bloody. He had already prepared to teleport in front of Wen Lanfeng at the critical moment. He believed that Bai Changchun would not kill him. As long as he had a chance, he was not afraid of not being able to save Wen Lanfeng. He remembered that he had saved Wen Lanfeng in the past. Who would have thought that no matter how much he calculated, he would actually miss the golden net that Nanming ancestor had set up to block the impact wave. Just as Bai Changchun punched, he teleported over, but unexpectedly, he was blocked by this treasure. This treasure was an upper-grade defensive spiritual treasure, refined by ancestor Nan Ming for his own use. Even a spiritual treasure of the same level would not be able to break it. Nongzhu wanted to tear it apart with his bare hands. With his cultivation, it was simply a dream. Master! Ziyi exclaimed. She had never seen her master so sad before. Farong and Lady Mu were even more confused. Ancestor Nan Ming was completely dumbfounded. He naturally knew what Nongzhu wanted to do, but he had ruined it. A series of events happened in an instant. Everything was unpredictable. Nongzhu helplessly howled while climbing the golden net. Now no one could stop Bai Changchun. No one could stop him. No, there was one more person. Maybe he could in a flash. The 3 words, Yu Qianqiu, suddenly appeared in his mind. Bai Changchun's precious disciple. This was his last hope. No matter what, he had to try. Nongzhu impatiently shouted, Yu Qianqiu, stop. For Yu Qianqiu, old Bai, for Yu Qianqiu, you can't kill him. Stop, stop. It had to be said that this sentence really stopped Bai Changchun from slapping down. At the last critical moment, the 3 words, Yu Qianqiu, made Bai Changchun's hand pause, and the following words made him completely stop. Although it was said to be slow, it actually happened very quickly. Everything happened almost in an instant. The 3 shadows behind Bai Changchun gradually disappeared. He stopped his hand and stood quietly in the air, letting Wen Lanfeng fall into the 1,000-mile lake. Bai Changchun coldly glanced at Nongzhu, who was crawling on the golden net like a crab, as if asking what he meant. Before Wen Lanfeng fell into the lake, he opened his eyes, which were full of disbelief. He also heard Nongzhu's words. He didn't expect that the name, Yu Qianqiu, could save him from death. The cold lake water drowned him, and he had no strength to control himself. Bai Changchun's 3 strikes were too powerful. Not only did they scatter the real vitality in his body, but his bones and meridians were also injured. If that palm hit him again, he wouldn't have the slightest ability to resist, and his body would have been torn into pieces. The greenish-blue lake water was stained with blood from his floating body, and it spread out in strands. Nongzhu's eyes were wide open. With a cheer, he jumped down from the golden net, seemingly crazy and lively. Ouch! Oh my God! Ancestor Nan Ming sighed helplessly, and finally felt relieved. Who knew that this sound would attract trouble? Bastard! Nongzhu roared angrily. She jumped over and grabbed his collar, punching and kicking him hard. Ancestor Nan Ming cried out in pain, but he didn't dare to fight back. After all, he was the one in the wrong. Son of AB***th, have you had enough? Ancestor Nan Ming roared and pushed him away. Damn it! Aren't you going to retract your stupid net? Do you want Wen Lanfeng to drown instead of being beaten to death? Nongzhu roared. Ancestor Nan Ming's anger was instantly extinguished. Why are you still in a daze? I'll beat you to death, you bastard. Nongzhu rushed over and beat him up again. The girls were all dumbfounded. They didn't expect that a soul formation expert was also human. No, he had such a human side. I was wrong. Stop hitting me, let me retract the net. Ancestor Nan Ming crawled out from under Nongzhu's punches and kicks, his face covered with bloody fingerprints from when Nongzhu pulled the golden net. Ancestor Nan Ming cast a spell, and the golden net returned to the sky above Obedient Island with a whoosh. It shrunk into a ball, turned into a golden light, and shot into his storage bag. Nongzhu didn't have time to argue with him. In an instant, she appeared below Bai Changchun, looked up, and smiled foolishly at him. Then, He leaped to the lake's surface and grabbed Wen Lanfeng, who was smiling foolishly at him. Seeing this, he raised his hand and gave Wen Lanfeng 2 big slaps. Then he picked him up and quickly flew to Obedient Island. As soon as he put him down, the others also came over. It's good that you're not dead, or I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life, Ancestor Nanming said with relief. He pressed his palm gently on Wen Lanfeng's chest to check his injuries. After a moment of silence, he exhaled and said, "Your true vitality has dissipated, and your meridians and bones are all injured. Fortunately, you have a good foundation. If it were someone else, I'm afraid they wouldn't have been able to withstand it. Think of a way to recover." Wen Lanfeng was secretly glad to be able to survive the disaster. Looking at the bloody fingerprints on Ancestor Nanming's face, he smiled knowingly. As a result, Nongzhu grabbed him again and gave him 2 more big slaps, scolding, "Smiling foolishly? What are you smiling for? You're happy that I didn't beat you to death, aren't you? You're not King dead, but I have to clean up your mess. Damn it. If I knew this earlier, I would have let you die freely." Chapter 510. These 2 slaps gave the group of people a fright. Ziyi opened her mouth. It was the first time she saw how brave her master was. This was Wen Lanfeng, the second expert in the world. Yet her master dared to slap him. How many people in the world would dare to do this? Ancestor Nanming touched his face subconsciously. This guy was crazy. He even dared to slap Wen Lanfeng. It seemed that he was not wronged. Although Wen Lanfeng did not have the strength to move, he was still sober. It was okay to slap him twice before. But why did he slap him twice now? Did he really think that his face could be slapped so casually? Wen Lanfeng immediately glared at him. "What are you looking at? Are you not convinced? Stand up and slap back. Aren't you very powerful? Why? Are you a bear now?" Nongzhu sneered at him. Seeing that he was not convinced, she immediately raised her hand again and shouted, "Do you believe that I will give you 2 more slaps?" Alas! Enough. Ancestor Nanming hurriedly hugged his arm. Wen Lanfeng was not a toy. How could he let him slap him casually? He had slapped him and scolded him. Nongzhu's anger had dissipated a lot. Regardless of whether Wen Lanfeng was willing or not, he lifted him up and helped him to sit cross-legged. He slapped his back and injected his vital energy into his body, helping him guide the dissipated vital energy back to his meridians. With Wen Lanfeng's cultivation, as long as he converged his vital energy, he should be able to recover quickly. The group of people stood on the side and looked at each other. They finally understood what it meant to slap and scold each other for love. Bai Changchun teleported back to the island. He glanced around coldly and pointed at Furong, saying, "Follow me." Then, he slowly walked toward the big house in the center of the island. Hibiscus was immediately at a loss of what to do, and didn't know what to do. Nongzhu, who was helping Wen Lanfeng guide his vital energy back, opened one eye and looked. Suddenly, she stopped and stood up. She said to Ancestor Nanming, "Come, I will take this girl." Ancestor Nanming nodded and sat behind Wen Lanfeng. Nongzhu waved to Furong, and the 2 entered the big house one after another. After entering, Bai Changchun still had that cold look in his eyes. Furong stood there uneasily, not knowing what to do. Nongzhu pointed at Bai Changchun and said, "Hurry up and greet him. This is Yu Qianqiu's master, the person your man asked me to bring you here." Furong walked over while trembling with fear. She knelt down and kowtowed. Junior Furong greets Senior. As soon as she knelt down, she didn't dare to get up. The scene of the battle had been carved into her heart. She hadn't expected Yu Qianqiu's master to be so powerful. Her heart was thumping non-stop, and she was extremely nervous. Even Bai Changchun and Nongzhu could hear her heartbeat. Only when Bai Changchun asked her to get up did she stand up timidly. Seeing her lower her head as if she had done something wrong, Bai Changchun said indifferently, "Raise your head and look at me." Furong didn't dare to be disobedient. She hurriedly raised her head, but her eyes were a bit disobedient. She didn't dare to look straight at him, and she frantically avoided Bai Changchun's gaze. Bai Changchun stared at her eyes. Although she was flustered, her eyes were clear and pure. She wasn't a woman with messy thoughts. This was especially obvious on Furong. Looking at her eyebrows, it was obvious that she had lost her virginity. You're Yu Qianqiu's woman? Bai Changchun's expression and tone had eased a lot. Yes, Furong didn't allow others to question her. When did you and Yu Qianqiu meet? Where did you meet? Why are you together? Bai Changchun kept asking questions. Nongzhu looked at him in a daze, as if she didn't know him. Then she stood aside and pinched her chin, smiling inwardly. This scene was a bit like an ugly daughter-in-law meeting her parents-in-law in the secular world. Hibiscus naturally didn't dare to conceal anything. Apart from some of the things that Yu Qianqiu had told her, everything else was poured out like beans from a bamboo tube. She spilled everything. After that, Bai Changchun let her go out. He coldly looked at Nongzhu and snorted. Tell me, what does it have to do with Yu Qianqiu to kill Wen Lanfeng or not? If you can't give me a satisfactory reason, Wen Lanfeng is still a dead man. It's useless for you to stop me. You can't do it again and again. Nongzhu's expression twitched. It seemed that if she didn't make up a satisfactory reason, Wen Lanfeng couldn't escape today. She smiled bitterly and said, Old Bai, why do you do this? The cultivation world is full of deceit. It's not easy to find a few true friends. Although Wen Lanfeng is a little too infatuated, he's still a good friend. Why do you want to kill him? This is not the reason I want to hear. Bai Changchun said indifferently. What a heartless guy. Nongzhu muttered and then said seriously, I don't want you to kill him. Of course, I'm selfish as a friend, but at the same time, it's also for the good of Yu Qianqiu. Think about it. Yu Qianqiu is in danger when he travels among countries. If Wen Lanfeng helps him when he needs it, he'll be much safer, won't he? Bai Changchun glanced at her coldly and snorted. You mean without Wen Lanfeng's protection, Yu Qianqiu won't be safe? Yes, you're powerful. As long as you show up, no one in the world will dare to touch your disciple. Nongzhu touched her forehead and said helplessly, What will happen after you go to the Holy East Land? Do you think those old guys will be content with their place? Do you think Yu Qianqiu can control the demon region with his current cultivation? Even if I do my best to help, Yu Qianqiu and I can't stop those people's ambitions. But with Wen Lanfeng it's different. You've seen his current strength. Except for you, no one in the world is his opponent. If Yu Qianqiu is in trouble, I don't dare to say for others, but I'm confident I can get Wen Lanfeng's help. You know, he's not a bad person. Bai Changchun was silent for a long time. His eyes were flickering. Later, he slowly closed his eyes and said no more. Nongzhu was secretly relieved. She finally convinced this old guy. At the same time, she admired herself for coming up with such a good reason. It seemed that she had been with Yu Qianqiu for too long and learned bad things. In the palace of Daong Kingdom, the winner of the lively martial arts competition was finally decided. As expected, Zhang Peng relied on his powerful skills to defeat all his opponents. No one was a match for him. Because of his extraordinary skills, people suspected that he was a cultivator. However, after the secret appraisal of several consecrators in the palace, he was indeed an ordinary person, not a cultivator. In the end, Zhang Peng did not know whether to laugh or cry as he accepted the crown of first place. Wen Yiyuan and Wen Bai of Baiwan Kingdom also did not know whether to laugh or cry. Yu Qianqiu had casually thrown out his follower and unexpectedly won the first place. Wen Bai also could not see that Zhang Peng was a cultivator. What made the two depressed was that Zhang Peng was a citizen of Baiwan. If he really became the son-in-law of Daong Kingdom, the fabricated background that he had previously registered would be exposed. They had to find a way to cover up his lie when they returned. On the same day, the Emperor of Daong Kingdom, Zhao Heng, decided to host a banquet to entertain the diligent talents of various countries. At night, the palace of Daong Kingdom was brightly lit. People sang and danced, immersed in a festive atmosphere. The top 20 winners of the competition received the honor of sitting in front of the emperor. Zhang Peng was naturally among them. He could be said to be the most lively one. People constantly came over to toast and congratulate this prospective son-in-law. Zhang Peng's face was constantly twitching. In the eyes of others, they thought that he was overjoyed. The lights were waning, and people were singing and dancing. It was a scene of wealth and honor. Zhang Peng did not know how much wine he had drunk to drown his sorrows. He felt like he wanted to make himself drunk. At this moment, A palace maid suddenly came behind him and whispered in his ear. The princess has ordered this servant to take young master to the West Palace for a while. Young master, please follow me. Zhang Peng was stunned when he heard this. He looked at the palace maid and thought to himself, could it be that I haven't officially married into the family, and that slut can't help but want to secretly have a rendezvous with me? I want to see what that slut wants to do. He was not afraid. He immediately got up and quietly left the banquet with the palace maid. The emperor, Zhao Heng, glanced at them and immediately recognized that the palace maid was his daughter's maid. He looked at the chief eunuch beside him and helplessly shook his head with a wry smile. The palace was deep, and there were guards everywhere. The palace maid held a golden token and led Zhang Peng without any obstruction. Zhang Peng was also worried that there was something fishy going on, so he memorized the surrounding terrain along the way. After entering a large courtyard, there was a faint fragrance. Obviously, they had arrived at the residence of a woman. The palace maid led him to a brightly lit room. Before entering the room, Zhang Peng looked up at the plaque above the door. The words Liu Xiangzhai were written in gold. As soon as he entered the room, he smelled the lingering fragrance of incense. In front of him were three women dressed in dignified white palace gowns. They were either standing or sitting, and their eyes were all fixed on him. The palace maid stepped forward and handed the golden token to the youngest of the three. Zhang Peng understood that this woman was most likely the princess. Zhao Qinxiang took the golden token and waved her hand to dismiss the maid. Send word that no matter what they hear, no one is allowed to come in without my permission. Yes. The palace maid received the order and retreated. With a schwa sound, the door was tightly shut. Zhang Peng suddenly turned his head to look, and his heart secretly became vigilant. The other two women unscrupulously surrounded Zhang Peng and circled around him, sizing him up. The three people in the room were the three daughters of the Dayang Kingdom's emperor Zhao Heng. After the eldest Zhao Rongxiang saw him, she covered her mouth and smiled at the second Zhao Hanxiang. He is a strong and burly man. Zhao Hanxiang nodded and smiled. Third sister, you got lucky. The third Zhao Qinxiang's face was as cold as ice, and there was not a trace of a smile. She suddenly shouted, Zhang Peng, why don't you kneel and greet this princess? The eldest and second Zhao Qinxiang smacked their lips. Third sister was establishing her might. They could not laugh anymore and quickly retreated. Zhang Peng coldly snorted and said without moving, I am not a subject of the Dayang Kingdom. Why should I kneel to you? You have become my Dayang Kingdom's consort. Naturally, you are a subject of the Dayang Kingdom. Zhao Qinxiang sternly said. I haven't done it yet, right? Zhang Peng sneered. It is not too late to talk about it after I have done it. How dare you? Zhao Qinxiang shouted. Her figure shot up with a whoosh, rushing towards Zhang Peng. Under her dazzling white palace dress, she kicked out a pair of legs. With a series of kicks, she sent a strong gust of wind straight towards Zhang Peng's head. This skinny woman knew kung fu. Zhang Peng was slightly startled. His figure swayed left and right, and he quickly dodged. Hey! Zhao Qinxiang's consecutive kicks missed. When she leaped over his head, she swung her leg backwards and swept across the back of his head. Every move was ruthless and aimed at his vital parts. Zhang Peng was slightly annoyed. In this palace, it was not good to fight back against a princess, but this woman was going too far. Immediately, he blocked it with his palm and chopped down on her ankle, blocking that leg. Although he did not use much strength, when Zhao Qinxiang landed on the ground, a trace of pain flashed across her face. However, she clenched her teeth and resisted. Then, she bent down and swept her leg. Zhang Peng could not help but laugh. Even if he was not a cultivator, with his martial arts, how could she sweep him down? Thus, he pressed down on his lower body and simply stood there, letting her sweep him. Pa! When the two legs collided, Zhao Qinxiang could not help but let out a weak groan of pain. Zhang Peng originally thought that she would understand how powerful he was by now. Who would have thought that she would pull back her leg, press down, and spring at him again? Her 10 fingers formed into sharp claws, and without the slightest bit of politeness, she clawed wildly, as if she wanted to ruin Zhang Peng's face. Although she was not afraid of being injured, she was wearing a mask. Once she clawed at him, she would definitely be exposed. Zhang Peng coldly snorted. This time he did not hold back. His figure flashed, and with a swing of his palm, he slapped her lower abdomen and directly threw her back onto the soft couch. The speed of the flash was extremely fast, and in the eyes of the two women, it was just a flash of a shadow. The two of them revealed expressions of surprise. This Zhang Peng was very powerful. No wonder he could win first place in the martial arts competition. Zhang Peng, how dare you attack the princess? The eldest sister, Zhao Rongxiang, shouted. Zhang Peng ignored her and stared at Zhao Qinxiang, asking, Princess, I don't know how I have offended you, but you want to kill me? Zhao Qinxiang covered her lower abdomen with her hand, gritted her teeth and said, I'll let you know what it means to be obedient. I'll let you know the consequences of not listening to this princess. After saying that, she rolled over and opened a long wooden box on the couch. 3 long swords with silver scabbards were grabbed and thrown out. Zhao Rongxiang and Zhao Hanxiang caught the swords and looked at each other. Zhao Qinxiang jumped off the couch with a sword in her hand and shouted, Eldest sister, second sister, set up a sword formation and teach him a lesson about the rules. Clang, clang, clang. The 3 swords were unsheathed. The 3 women flew like butterflies, and their swords intertwined with each other. Zhang Peng was speechless. How could all the daughters of the imperial family know martial arts? How did the emperor teach his daughters? As he dodged, he discovered that the youngest and unruly princess was the most vicious. The tip of her sword was actually aimed at his genitals several times. This thoroughly infuriated Zhang Peng. With a speed that was inconceivably fast for the 3 women, he flicked his fingers and easily seized the swords in the 3 women's hands. The 3 women stared at their empty hands in shock. Before they could react, they saw a figure flash by. They felt their bodies go numb, and they couldn't move. Zhang Peng took the opportunity to seal the acupuncture points of the 3 women, and with a swing of his sword, the swords were nailed to the wooden beam. Don't think that just because you are a princess, I don't care about a trifling dying kingdom. Zhang Peng arrogantly threw down these words. He wanted to turn around and leave, but he immediately thought of the many guards in the palace. In addition, there were experts from the cultivation world overseeing this place. He really couldn't just barge in. His gaze fell on the gold medal on the small table beside the couch. He spat out the alcohol in his stomach and went over to pick up the gold medal. When he turned around and brushed past the princess, he caught a glimpse of the unruly princess's eyes filled with endless resentment. He was slightly startled and stopped to size up Zhao Qinxiang. He discovered that she was a delicate beauty with a slender waist and an alluring chest. His mind slightly heated up. He didn't know if it was because of the alcohol, but he now remembered his master's words to get the princess to bed as soon as possible. Since master has already said so, how can I not follow? Zhang Peng silently thought. As someone who grew up in a war, he paid particular attention to neatness. He turned around and moved Zhao Rongxiang and Zhao Hanxiang to face the wall. He then picked up Zhao Qinxiang and threw her on the soft couch. Zhao Qinxiang couldn't speak or move. She stared at Zhang Peng in fear, not knowing what he wanted to do. Hiss! Zhang Peng raised his hand and directly tore off her clothes. It seemed that he didn't know what gentleness was, and in a few moments, a white and tender body was revealed. Zhao Rongxiang and Zhao Hanxiang's eyes widened. Zhang Peng didn't notice that opposite them was a bronze mirror used for dressing up. The movement on the couch could be seen in the mirror. The 2 girls saw the man in the bronze mirror take off his clothes and press down heavily. If the 2 girls hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have never believed that someone dared to humiliate the princess in the palace. Zhao Qinxiang's eyes widened and tears silently flowed. She endured the pain of a broken melon. She never thought that there would be such a daring person, and in the end, she fainted from anger. After Zhang Peng was done, he was also slightly shocked. He realized that he was a little too impulsive. He was secretly a little worried. Would something happen? After putting on his clothes, he pulled a brocade quilt to cover the beauty he had defiled. He took the gold medal and left without saying anything else. He really had the demeanor of a general. Just now, he was a little flustered, but once he opened the door, he regained his composure. He closed the door and showed the gold medal to the palace maids who came over. he said in a deep voice. The three princesses have something to discuss. Without a summon, no one is allowed to enter. The palace maids acknowledged and retreated. He swaggered out with the gold medal and went back the way he came. By the time he returned to the banquet, it was already coming to an end. Just in time for the banquet to end, he quietly followed the crowd and left. Emperor Zhaoheng saw that Zhang Peng came back alone. He didn't even have a guide. How could the palace allow an outsider to trespass? With a suspicious look in his eyes, he signaled the chief eunuch beside him with his eyes. As soon as he left the palace, Zhang Peng quickly found Pingxin Wang Wenyu to say goodbye, saying that he had something to do and would leave first. He also knew that the matter had gotten out of hand. Paper could not contain fire. He found an empty alley and quickly flew into the sky, returning to the small courtyard of the embassy. In the courtyard, Yu Qianqiu and Exan Laosan were drinking under the moonlight and chatting about the cultivation world. Zhang Peng's sudden intrusion almost startled Exan Laosan into making a move. During this time, there were too many people who were eyeing Yu Qianqiu covetously. When he realized that it was Zhang Peng, Exan Laosan was even more shocked. He didn't expect that this guy was actually a cultivator. Zhang Peng, what's wrong? Yu Qianqiu also noticed that there was something wrong with Zhang Peng's expression. Zhang Peng looked at Exan Laosan and stammered, Sir, can I have a word with you? Chapter 511. Third Lord Exan was unhappy to hear this. It was obvious that Third Lord Exan was trying to avoid him. Yu Qianqiu was startled. This was the first time he saw Zhang Peng like this. He thought that it must be something important. He waved his hand and entered the house with Zhang Peng. As for whether Third Lord Exan was happy or not, it was not his concern. It was not the time to care about Third Lord Exan's mood. Zhang Peng seemed to be afraid that someone would eavesdrop. With his early-stage tribulation passing cultivation, he barely set up a soundproof enchantment. Then he scratched his head, not knowing what to say. Yu Qianqiu looked him up and down and frowned. What the hell are you doing? If you have something to say, spit it out. I have something important to do tonight. I don't have time to watch you pretend to be a woman. Zhang Peng gritted his teeth and finally told him everything that had happened. Yu Qianqiu's mouth opened wider and wider as he listened. After a long time, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He gave a thumbs up and said, I thought I was a bastard enough. I didn't expect you to surpass your master. You actually dared to capture the princess in the palace. You are really not afraid of death. Don't you know that there are 3 old men in the last stage of tribulation passing in the palace? If they find out, they will kill you on the spot. No one will be able to refute it. Zhang Peng lowered his head in shame and muttered, Master, you were the one who told me to get the princess into bed as soon as possible. *CK your sister. When did I say such a shameful thing? Yu Qianqiu immediately rolled his eyes. But he couldn't finish his sentence. He remembered that he had indeed said such a thing. Master, do you remember now? Zhang Peng asked weakly. Pfft. You were the one who did not control your lower body. Now you are blaming Master. How dare you say that? Why did I accept a beast like you as my disciple? Fortunately, I had the foresight to not let you call me Master in front of others. Otherwise, I would have lost all my face. Sigh. I am ashamed. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. Master, I know I was wrong. Zhang Peng scratched his head awkwardly. This can't be hidden for long. They will find out sooner or later. Master, why don't we escape first? Come on, I've always been an upright person. When have I ever escaped? Yu Qianqiu poked his chest and said, You have to bear the consequences of your own actions. Didn't you get first place in the martial arts competition? Anyway, the princess will be yours sooner or later. It doesn't matter if you try the horse first before fitting the saddle. You might as well stay in Deyang Kingdom and be the prince consort. Zhang Peng panicked. Master, you can't go back on your word. You said that sleeping with the princess doesn't mean that I have to be the prince consort. Shut up. I'm warning you, I've never said anything like that. You can't slander your master's character anywhere. Zhang Peng had just been scolded to the point of dejection. He rubbed his chin and muttered, Damn it. Wasn't it just sleeping with a woman? What's the big deal? If you were a commoner's daughter and you dared to do this, I would cripple you immediately. As for the emperor's daughter, since the emperor has many wives, he must have many daughters as well. Zhang Peng suddenly raised his head and weakly asked, Master, you mean? Don't give me that cowardly look. It's disgusting. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and coldly said, So what if she is the emperor's daughter? Do what you have to do. Master is here. What are you afraid of? He then walked out. That's right, that's right. There's nothing in this world that Master can't handle. Zhang Peng suddenly became spirited. The Iron Tower-like man nodded and bowed. He was just short of massaging Zhang Peng's shoulders and back. He removed the soundproof enchantment and quickly followed. In the imperial study of the imperial palace, Zhao Heng was drinking a hangover soup from a eunuch. The head eunuch walked in with a taut face. He gave a look to the eunuch in the room, and the eunuch quickly retreated. Zhao Heng looked at him and calmly asked, What's wrong? The head eunuch went over and whispered a few words. Zhao Heng could no longer sit still and stood up abruptly. Pa! The cup in his hand shattered on the ground. Preposterous! Preposterous! Zhao Heng roared madly. He kicked over the imperial table in front of him and strode out. After rushing to the imperial harem and informing the three Mi brothers of the news, they were immediately enraged. Someone actually dared to do that to the princess under their noses. If word got out, wouldn't they become a laughing stock? It was obvious that he didn't care about the three brothers at all. He clearly didn't care about Illumination Peak. Esteemed elders, I know that the Wen clan of Aquamarine Nation has an extraordinary status in the cultivation world, but I really cannot swallow this grievance today. I implore the esteemed elders to uphold justice for me. Zhao Heng cupped his hands in front of his chest and said angrily. He had already made up his mind. If the three masters were not willing to come forward, he would mobilize the army to besiege the Baiwan nation's embassy. Mi Russian said in a low voice. We watched the third young lady grow up. We will naturally seek justice for her. He turned to the two sides and said, You two stand guard. I will go to the Baiwan nation's embassy to ask for her. Then he quickly flew away. The group of people from Baiwan nation returned to the embassy in a drunken state and dispersed. When Yu Yuan and Wen Bai had just walked into the main hall, when they saw Yu Qianqiu sitting leisurely in the main hall, Zhang Peng stood silently at the side and third Xian was looking around. Wen Bai walked over and cupped his hands and said, Mister, is there anything? His tone was very respectful. Ever since he saw Yu Qianqiu's heroism in the battle that day, he could not help but admire him. Haha, nothing much. Yu Qianqiu stood up and said with a smile, We have disturbed you for many days. We are here to bid farewell to the two of you. When Yu Yuan and Wen Bai looked at each other worriedly, the latter frowned and said, Is Zhang Peng also leaving with Mister? Of course. We are also embarrassed to be living and eating for free, Yu Qianqiu said with a laugh. Mister, do you know that Zhang Peng has already won the first place? There will be a ceremony in a few days, and he will become the emperor's son-in-law of Daong Nation? If he leaves, how will Baiwan Nation answer to Daong Nation? Wen Bai said gloomily. Sigh, I'm afraid he won't be the emperor's son-in-law anymore. This guy has caused some trouble. Yu Qianqiu summarized Zhang Peng's scandal with great regret. Wen Bai and Wen Yuan were instantly dumbfounded. Third brother Xian suddenly turned around and stared at Zhang Peng without blinking. He thought to himself, No wonder he came over in a hurry to whisper to me. So this is what happened. What's the difference between this and slapping Hua Zhongming's face? What guts? Originally, I didn't have the face to stay after causing trouble. But after thinking about it, I can't leave without knowing the reason and put the Wen family in a difficult position. So I waited for the two of you to come back and inform you so that you can prepare in advance. Yu Qianqiu said helplessly. When Yu Yuan's face was already dark. He was the one who arranged for Zhang Peng's registration. If the two nations became enemies, how would he explain to the monarch when he returned? Wen Bai's expression twitched. Prepare in advance? How can we prepare in advance? If Mister takes Zhang Peng away, I'm afraid none of us will be able to leave Baiwan Nation. TSK. As the younger generation of the world's second strongest expert, how can he be so afraid of trouble? Yu Qianqiu shook his head and then asked suspiciously, Didn't Senior Wenrui tell you the reason why he is in a hurry to leave? In fact, he also knew in his heart that Wenrui had no reason to tell such a big thing like when Lanfeng coming out of seclusion. No. Wenbai shook his head. He wanted to ask but dared not. He was not qualified to inquire about matters of the upper echelons. But he showed an inquiring look. No wonder. Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. You don't need to be afraid of Dian Nation looking for trouble, because your old ancestor, Wen Lanfeng, has come out of seclusion. Ah. Wenbai and Wen Yuan were shocked. The pillar of Baiwan Nation who had been in seclusion for 100 years had come out. This was such a big thing. No wonder the old high priest was in a hurry to return. Ah, that's all I have to say. If they come looking for trouble, you can bring up your old ancestor. They won't dare to not give face to your old ancestor. We'll take our leave first. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and called out to Zhang Peng before leaving. He really wanted to leave, but he thought that he should not be too shameless. If he caused trouble for others, he should at least greet them and point them in the right direction. However, he had done too many bad things. Occasionally, a kind thought would delay him. It seemed that it was a little too late for him to leave now. They all paused at the same time. They sensed a divine sense sweep over them. Mi Russian had quietly appeared in the lobby, staring at Zhang Peng like a hawk. Yu Qianqiu also looked at Zhang Peng with an inquiring look. Didn't you say that no one would find out what you did for a while? Someone is staring at you like this, obviously for you. Zhang Peng was speechless. No one could explain if something happened to this thing. Wenbai and Wen Yuan looked at each other. They did not expect the other party to come looking for them. Third brother Xian did not care about the matter, and continued to stay silent. Haha. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, High Priest Mi, what brings you here? Mi Russian ignored him, and pointed at Zhang Peng. He said indifferently, Come with me. Damn it. I like people who are unreasonable, because I like to be reasonable. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows. He waved his hand at Zhang Peng, and signaled him not to speak. He said in a deep voice, High Priest Mi, you sure are powerful. You want people to follow you, but they have to listen to you? Yu Qianqiu, this matter is not up to you to interfere. You are too meddlesome. You should think about how to protect your own life. Dayang City will not let you hide forever. Mi Russian said expressionlessly. My life is in my hands. I don't need others to worry about it. But you, if you want to take my people away, you have to ask for my permission, Yu Qianqiu said bluntly. The scene of Ong Kuang Sung Qing Fu coming to Fu Xian Island to ask for Guan Weiwu suddenly appeared in his mind. Guan Weiwu's silence made him feel cold. If he could not protect his own disciple, he would not be able to show his face anymore. Since when did Baiwan country's people become your people? Mi Russian squinted his eyes. Yu Qianqiu smiled coldly and said, Since when do you not need to worry about my people? Could it be that I still need to report everything to you? I want to ask you, what right do you have to take him away? You are asking him what he did, Mi Russian said sternly. Oh. Yu Qianqiu turned around and said, Zhang Peng, what did you do? Zhang Peng shook his head and said, I did not do anything. Chapter 512. Wenbai and the other two were speechless. These two were acting shamelessly. Mi Russian stared at Zhang Peng with a livid expression and said in a deep voice, You dare to quibble in front of me. I think you are tired of living. High official Mi, you are wrong. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. It is understandable that he did something bad and did not admit it. But I really do not believe that he did something good and did not admit it. Birds of a feather flock together. You two shameless people, you have no choice but to leave today. Mi Russian narrowed his eyes and stopped arguing with them. He suddenly disappeared in front of everyone. Teleportation. The others were shocked. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed with fierceness. He quickly turned around and locked onto Zhang Peng's surroundings. Zhang Peng also knew the situation was bad. His shoulders shook and his protective energy surged out. As expected, Mi Russian appeared in front of him in an instant and slapped with his palm, trying to forcefully shatter the other's protective energy. How dare you? Yu Qianqiu attacked with his palm almost at the same time and shouted, Absorbing Star's great skill. Zhang Peng's cultivation was much lower than Mi Russian's. He tried to dodge but failed. Bang! His protective aura was instantly shattered. His whole body was sent flying to the corner of the wall, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Although Wen Yuan was a prince, he was only a mortal. Seeing this, he felt his heart palpitate. These cultivators were actually attacking right before his eyes. When Mi Russian attacked Zhang Peng, he had already turned around to look at Yu Qianqiu. Seeing that the latter wanted to fight him in cultivation, he sneered. After knocking down one of them with a single palm strike, Yi Xuan quickly countered with a palm strike towards Yu Qianqiu. However, the moment he attacked again, Mi Russian suddenly shuddered. He felt like something was rapidly flowing out of his body, and his body was rapidly stiffening, especially when the meridians in his body were rapidly contracting. His vital energy could not flow smoothly. Dense white smoke gushed out from Mi Russian's body. Yu Qianqiu's palm was like a tube that attracted the wind. He followed Yu Qianqiu's advice and sucked the dense white smoke into his palm. Mi Russian's entire body shrunk rapidly, revealing an outline that was even drier than a mummy. His appearance was extremely horrifying. Third brother Xian, Wen Bai, and Wen Yuan were all dumbfounded. Crack. Mi Russian's palm was still moving, but the crowd saw a withered arm fly out from his sleeve. Yu Qianqiu tilted his body slightly and watched as the arm brushed past him and smashed into pieces outside the hall. He turned around to look at the skinny skeleton in front of him and sneered. You're really willing to sacrifice yourself to throw your arm out to hit someone. This joke was really cold. Seeing Mi Russian like this, Third Xian and the others could not help but shiver. They felt like they were in a dream as they stood there, recalling everything that had just happened. Mi Russian was already unrecognizable. His dried skin shrunk and his bones tightened. His appearance was extremely horrifying, but he still stood firm. From the contours of his face, one could faintly sense the fear he had before his death. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Zhang Peng, who was slowly getting up from the corner of the wall, while wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. A hint of fierceness flashed through his eyes. He walked to the mummy and said face to face, High Priest Mi, you could have attacked anyone, but you had to attack my people. I will not give Hua Zongming any face. Please don't take offense, and punish him lightly. He took out the storage pouch on the corpse's waist, and with a wave of his hand, a burst of green flames incinerated the corpse into ashes. Mi Russian disappeared just like that? Xi and Laosan and Wen Bai looked at each other in dismay. Now they finally understood how Chu Dingfang died that day. The 4 words absorbing Star's great technique were deeply imprinted in their minds. What a terrifying technique. Yu Qianqiu looked as if nothing had happened, but in fact, he was secretly happy that he had once again proven the power of the water art. But he also understood that Mi Russian died because he was caught off guard. Plus, he was standing close to Mi Russian, which allowed him to maximize the absorption power of the water art. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to kill Mi Russian. Seeing that Zhang Peng was fine, Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands at the others and said, Goodbye. Yu Qianqiu, where are you going? I will go too. Third Xian flashed over. Yu Qianqiu pointed at Zhang Peng and said, He is seriously injured. I need to take him for treatment. Don't come and join the fun. Are you seriously injured? Third Xian looked at Zhang Peng suspiciously. He did not seem to be injured. He then asked, What about your promise to go to Lingfang Valley with me? Don't worry. I am a man of my word. I will definitely do what I promised. Yu Qianqiu confidently patted his chest. He thought to himself, I have to go just to see what the most beautiful woman in the world looks like. He casually took out a jade archive and wrote something in it. He threw it to Third Xian. Third Xian looked at it and put it away. He nodded and said, I understand. Yu Qianqiu was about to turn and leave when he saw Wen Bai and Wen Yuan looking at the pile of ashes on the ground with a worried expression. He knew what they were worried about. He smiled and said, I will bear the consequences of my own actions. Since I have already taken action, you can push all the blame on me. If they come to ask for Zhang Peng, tell them that I am the one who took Zhang Peng away and killed Mi Russian. Let them come to me. Goodbye. Then he left with Zhang Peng. The others looked at each other speechlessly. After a while, Third Xian also took his leave. Wen Bai hurriedly went to a remote wing of the embassy. Before when Rui arrived, he had spent a lot of effort and spirit stones to set up a communication formation in the wing to make it easier for him to contact his family. One Bai could use this formation to inform his family of what had happened here. On the peak of a mountain in Utopia, Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared with Zhang Peng in tow. Zhang Peng looked around. He was puzzled. Why did Master bring him here instead of returning to the military camp or Misty Palace? Kneel! Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted. Zhang Peng was shocked. He saw his master glaring at him under the moonlight. He hurriedly knelt down as instructed. Yu Qianqiu stared at him and said in a deep voice, Zhang Peng, I am warning you again. Today's incident happened in the imperial family, but I want you to remember one thing. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're a cultivator. I, your master, dare to do anything except harm the common people. If I ever find out that the thing between your legs has harmed the common people, I have 1,000 ways to make you wish you were dead. Do you understand? Zhang Peng's heart skipped a beat. Your disciple understands. Chief Instructor Guan is currently studying and arranging a battle plan. If your injuries are not too serious, return to the team and prepare to be deployed, Yu Qianqiu said calmly. A simple warning was enough. Whether he listened or not was his business. If he listened, then so be it. If he didn't, then he wouldn't be lenient. Yes. Zhang Peng's eyes lit up. He liked this idea. He immediately flew towards the military camp. Under the moonlight, Yu Qianqiu took out a jade archive. He inserted his divine sense into it and carefully examined it again. It was a complete map of Daong Kingdom. Within Hua Zongming's territory, there were a total of 17 spirit stone mines, all of which had high yields. According to the records in the Jade Archive, these spirit stone mines had to hand over their spirit stones at a fixed time every month. The scouting team that Yu Qianqiu had sent out did not disappoint him. Within the time that he had requested, they had successfully planted teleportation markers near the 17 spirit stone mines. If nothing changed, the day of handing over the spirit stones to Illumination Peak would be a few days later. If he were to rob them at this time, he would gain something. Actually, these spirit stone mines only produced a few 100,000 high-grade spirit stones per month. The 17 spirit stone mines only produced a few million spirit stones in total. This small amount of spirit stones was no longer enough for him to make a big fuss. If he really wanted to get his hands on spirit stones, it would be more worth it to just rob the spirit stones that they had accumulated for hundreds or even thousands of years. But this time, he didn't just want to rob them. His main goal was to cause destruction. His goal was to take revenge on Hua Zongming. Because of this guy, the contents of the Jade Archive had been made public, messing up all his plans. Moreover, Hua Zongming had set himself against him. If he didn't take revenge, it would be difficult to quell the hatred in his heart. The reason why he hadn't left Daong City for the past few days was to wait for news from the scouting team. Moreover, there was another benefit to doing this. Today's incident would definitely infuriate Hua Zongming. It would be good to do something else to distract him. Also, he wanted his team members to see more blood. After a while, Yu Qianqiu disappeared from Utopia and began to personally investigate every spirit stone mine. A thick fog suddenly appeared in the wilderness of a spirit stone mine. The mineshaft guards didn't care, as natural phenomena were not something that they could interfere with. After Yu Qianqiu had a clear understanding of the people's arrangements, he quietly retracted the thick fog and sent a message back to Guan Yu, who was arranging the battle plan. Then, he appeared at the next spirit stone mine and continued the same process. Once the situation of the 17 mines was clear, the 17 teams in Utopia were ready to set off. After Yu Qianqiu returned, he brazenly gave the order to kill, rob, and destroy everything. Then he sent the 17 teams to the various mines. The 17 bloody massacres began. As expected, none of the team members were spared. They even flipped through every corner, killing and robbing everything. The cultivators in the mine had nowhere to run. They cried and screamed, and blood flowed like a river. Before they retreated, these team members rushed into the mine with a large number of astral breaching talismans. Starting from the innermost passageway, He blew them up one by one until all the passageways in the Spirit Stone mine collapsed. Every residential area in the mine was also blasted to the ground. After sending the last team back to Utopia, Yu Qianqiu stood on a hill under the light of dawn. He looked at the crippled Spirit Stone mine below and sneered to himself. Hua Zhongming, don't you like to play? I'll play with you until I'm injured. These collapsed Spirit Stone mines can let you play to your heart's content. Let's see how many years it will take for you to gather thousands of cultivators to mine. After he left, a shrill wind howled in the mountains. It was as if the souls of the cultivators lying quietly in a pool of blood were lingering, wailing about something. In the mess, a black triangular flag fluttered in the wind. The word hero bloomed in the blood. Chapter 513. In Utopia's military camp, Guan Yu looked solemnly at Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting across the table with his legs crossed. He had personally led a group of people to loot a Spirit Stone mine. When he saw the people he had personally trained massacring, he could not describe what he was feeling. He thought about how the people in the 17 Spirit Stone mines had all been killed. That was a few thousand people. He was shocked. He could not understand what Yu Qianqiu was trying to do. Why did he have to kill so many people? Unable to bear it, he ordered the few leaders to let the miners with low cultivation levels live. However, to his surprise, the few leaders did not carry out his orders firmly for the first time. One of them asked, "Chief Instructor, the order we received from the leader was to kill, rob, and destroy all of them. Did the leader change his orders?" He paused for a moment before saying, "No. These miners with low cultivation levels won't pose any danger, even if they stay. Why is there a need to kill them all?" The few leaders looked at each other and said in unison, "It's our duty to obey the leader's orders. Chief Instructor, please take back your orders and carry out the leader's orders." Guan Yu was speechless. He waved his hand and gestured for them to continue. Only now did he understand why Yu Qianqiu would place so much importance on the brainwashing education. He kept instilling in all his team members the necessity and benefits of being loyal to the leader, as well as painting a beautiful future for all his team members. After this test, he understood that although he had the right to train this army, the real commanding authority had always been in Yu Qianqiu's hands. This army would only listen to Yu Qianqiu's commands. Any orders that went against Yu Qianqiu's will could not be carried out in this army. "Why did you kill so many people?" Guan Yu asked. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and lay on the chair. He placed his feet on the table and swung them gently. As soon as he returned, he received a secret report from his subordinates, saying that Guan Yu had given an order that was contrary to his. He knew Guan Yu quite well. When he kidnapped this guy, he was only in the qi refining stage and had never experienced in the cultivation world. How could he know the dangers of the cultivation world? It was not surprising that he was soft-hearted. After a moment of silence, Yu Qianqiu did not reply to him. Instead, he opened his eyes and asked Zhang Peng. "Zhang Peng, when you were in a war, what was the highest number of people you saw die in a battle?" "This is the most I've ever seen. More than 100,000 people died on both sides. The battlefield was filled with dead bodies as far as the eye could see," Zhang Peng replied. He glanced at Guan Yu with a hint of dissatisfaction. Guan Yu actually dared to go against his own master. He was someone who had been tempered by blood and fire on the battlefield. Just now, he had killed to his heart's content, so he didn't have the heart to do so. A general's success is built on the bones of tens of thousands. Yu Qianqiu mumbled and put down his leg on the table. He stared at Guan Yu and shook his head. "Yunchang, I'm not a homicidal maniac. I definitely wouldn't kill so many people for no reason. I naturally have my reasons for doing so. You're a good person, but sometimes you're too soft-hearted. Looks like I need to arrange for you to go out with me. What do you think?" Guan Yu was silent for a moment. Then he shook his head and said, "Forget it. I don't need to change myself. This is good enough. In the future, let other people do the fighting and killing. I'll stay here and continue to do my own things." As he said this, his mind was thinking about the woman in white in Ethereal Palace. He sighed in his heart. "Let me watch over her silently. I'm willing to watch over her silently for the rest of my life." I don't want to go anywhere. I just hope to see her once in a while, and I'll be satisfied. Yu Qianqiu didn't understand what he was thinking, but he could sense that he was a little depressed. He muttered, "That's fine too. From now on, you should focus on training. The fighting and killing in the outside world really doesn't suit you." After exiting Daeong City's west gate, there was a wide official road. Following this road, it led to many countries. Third brother Xian rode a horse and followed the instructions in the Jade Archive, following the official road. However, after walking for half a day, he didn't see Yu Qianqiu at all. He began to suspect that Yu Qianqiu was playing with him. As he passed by a col between two mountains, he suddenly heard the sound of rushing wind. Third brother Xian caught it with his hand, turned his head and shouted, "Who's there?" He saw Yu Qianqiu walking out of the forest on the hillside, holding a green apple in his hand and chewing on it with a grin. Third brother Xian's face lit up. He looked at the green apple in his hand and took a bite of it as well. However, he realized that it was so sour that his tongue was about to fall off. He quickly threw it away. Yu Qianqiu wasn't much better off. He was also vomiting nonstop. Third brother Xian cursed, "Yu Qianqiu, how could you let me eat something so disgusting? Damn it. There's a wild apple tree in this forest." I took a bite and realized that it was disgusting, Yu Qianqiu said as he stuck out his tongue. "Then why did you eat it so happily? You tricked me on purpose. Sigh. Didn't you say that we'd share blessings and misfortunes together? Why are you here?" Third brother Xian looked around. Yu Qianqiu was still spitting out the acid in his mouth. He had paid a hefty price to trick him. As he vomited, he said, "I've been waiting for you here." In fact, the Jade Archive he gave third brother Xian contained a strand of his own consciousness. He could contact third brother Xian at any time. Third brother Xian had just arrived here, and he had just left Utopia. He guessed that the cultivators guarding outside Daeong City would have to wait in vain for a period of time. The two of them discussed where to go. Then they released their horses and flew away together. Light Illumination Peak, Great Hall of Light. Mirohai wept bitterly as he told his master the news of his brother's death. Hua Zhongming's face was dark. He crushed the golden cup in his hand into a golden pancake. He said sternly, "Yu Qianqiu, how dare you?" From this, it could be seen that Wenbai had indeed followed Yu Qianqiu's instructions and pushed all the blame onto him. "Return to the palace first and detain the people from Baiwan Nation. I'd like to see how the Wen family will explain this to me." Hua Zhongming narrowed his eyes. "I won't forgive Yu Qianqiu. Master, there's one more thing." Mirohai wiped his tears and said, "The Wen family said that their ancestor Wen Lanfeng has come out of closed-door cultivation." "What?" Hua Zhongming was shocked. He asked again, "What did you say?" "The Wen family said that Wen Lanfeng has come out of closed-door cultivation," Mirohai repeated. In fact, when he found out that his brother had been killed last night, he had wanted to kill a few people from the Wen family to vent his anger. Who knew that Wenbai would suddenly say that Wen Lanfeng had come out of closed-door cultivation, which shocked him. He naturally knew what kind of person Wen Lanfeng was. He was someone that even his master was wary of. Although he was angry, he did not dare to cause trouble for his master. He could only suppress his anger and return to Light Illumination Peak to report to his master. "That love addict has come out of closed-door cultivation?" Hua Zhongming slowly sat down and thought for a while. He sighed and said, "Don't touch the people from the Wen family for now. I'm no match for that guy. Don't provoke them for now. Wait until I've gathered the information. You go back first." He had no choice but to obey his master's orders. Mirohai choked and left. At this moment, a strong man directly flashed into the Great Light Hall. After bumping into Mirohai, he frowned and said, "Ninth junior brother, what's wrong?" This person was Hua Zhongming's eldest disciple Lu Chengjian. He looked much younger than Mirohai, but in fact he was older than him. Mirohai choked and said, "Eldest senior brother, my eldest brother was killed by Yu Qianqiu." "Ah, eighth junior brother was killed? What happened?" Lu Chengjian asked in shock. Mirohai rambled again. The former was so angry that he laughed and said, "What a good Yu Qianqiu. He dared to provoke our Light Illumination Peak." "Chengjian, why did you come here in such a hurry?" Hua Zhongming asked, feeling a headache coming on. Master, misfortune never comes alone. Lu Qingjian took out the little black flag of the hero and walked over. Our 17 spirit stone mines were destroyed overnight. What? Hua Zhongming stood up again and snatched the little black flag. After looking at it, he sneered. Another hero. I thought he was only targeting Yin Baikong. So he specifically landed in our Daong kingdom to cause trouble. I wanted to watch Yin Baikong get into trouble. What do you mean by the spirit stone mines were destroyed? Lu Chengjian clenched his fists so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. 17 spirit stone mines were completely destroyed, and all the spirit stones that were delivered were looted. Several thousand disciples were slaughtered, and not a single one of them survived. It will be very difficult to recover. The Great Light Hall instantly quieted down. Mirahai no longer cried and quietly retreated to Light Illumination Peak. This matter was much more important than his eldest brother's death. The 17 spirit stone mines were the main source of Light Illumination Peak's spirit stones. If he continued to cry, he might be punished by his master. It was better to obediently return. This is not looting. Someone is taking revenge on me. Otherwise, there is no need to be so ruthless. Hua Zhongming's face was gloomy. He opened the flag in his hand and said with an unpredictable expression, "The master of this hero should have a grudge against me. He is someone I know." 17 spirit stone mines were attacked in one night. Hehe. This was premeditated a long time ago. Master. 8th Junior was killed on the same day as the attack on the spirit stone mines. Do you think this matter is related to Yu Qianqiu? Lu Chengjian asked suspiciously. It shouldn't be. Hua Zhongming shook his head. This is not something that one person can do. It is impossible for us to not know that Yu Qianqiu brought so many people from Huaxia. With his cultivation, it is impossible for him to travel to so many places in one night. As he said this, his face suddenly turned sinister. Investigate. Use all the people that can be used. Don't worry about other things. Investigate this matter first. I want to see who is behind this. Lu Chengjian immediately went to make arrangements. Such a big matter naturally could not be hidden. In a few days, the news spread throughout the cultivation world. The mysterious hero once again caused an uproar in various countries. Yin Baikong, who was on Cornucopia's God of Wealth peak, had been depressed by the previous incident. He had mobilized his subordinates to investigate everywhere, but to no avail. When he heard this news, he was stunned at first, but then he laughed out loud. At first, he thought that the hero was specifically targeting him. He did not expect it to be even more ruthless this time. That bastard Hua Zhongming must not be laughing anymore. Perhaps he was also implicated by that bastard last time. The hero must have been cutting grass to kill a rabbit, robbing him along the way. In fact, the main target was Hua Zhongming. Otherwise, there was no need to be so ruthless. After thinking it through, Yin Baikong felt much better. After being depressed for a long time, he finally decided to go down the mountain to see how business was going. Chapter 514. World Commerce. Speaking of world commerce, one had to mention its founder, Yin Baikong. Yin Baikong could be said to be an extraordinary person in the cultivation world. It wasn't because of his high cultivation, but because he liked doing business. He was unique among the spirit-severing experts in the cultivation world. It was because of this that he founded World Commerce. The headquarters of World Commerce was in Cornucopia. The tallest mountain in Cornucopia was called God of Wealth Peak. This series of names were all given by Yin Baikong himself. From this, it could be seen that Yin Baikong really did have a hobby of doing business. Even now, when his cultivation had reached spirit-severing late stage, he would still personally pay attention to business matters. Cornucopia could be said to be the most prosperous place in the cultivation world. Of course, Yin Baikong wasn't the only shop here. Otherwise, his business wouldn't be so prosperous. Every country had their own shops here. The flourishing area around the foot of God of Wealth Peak was Cornucopia. Yin Baikong himself often stood on God of Wealth Peak and gazed down, thinking back to the barren mountain valley that had become the flourishing area it was today. Yin Baikong was often very proud. Cornucopia Hall was where world commerce's money came and went. The spirit stones that flowed here every day, if converted to high-grade spirit stones, were at least 10 million. At this moment, in Cornucopia Hall, World Commerce's disciples were counting the spirit stones that flowed in and out. Jing Yuankong was overseeing this place. Yin Baikong had his hands behind his back. Like an old merchant, he barged in and looked around. When World Commerce's disciples saw Yin Baikong, none of them actually said anything. They just glanced at him, and then lowered their heads to do their own things. Jing Yuankong was slightly startled. Master had always been in a bad mood. Why did he come down today? It seemed like he was in a good mood today. Jing Yuankong hurriedly bowed, and then led his master to the back hall. Because the front hall was a busy place, chatting was not allowed. This rule was set by Yin Baikong himself, and he had always been the first to follow it. When they reached the back hall, Yin Baikong's first words were, "Has everything been normal?" "Everything is normal," Jing Yuankong replied. Yin Baikong nodded. "Cornucopia Hall is about to begin. How are the preparations?" "Everything is being prepared in an orderly manner. It won't affect the Cornucopia Hall," Jing Yuankong said seriously. Cornucopia Hall was the largest trading event in the cultivation world. It was held once every 10 years. At that time, there would be a large number of cultivators from various countries. It could be said to be exceptionally prosperous. It was also the time when the World Chamber of Commerce was rolling in money. The master and disciple talked about business for a long time. Finally, Yin Baikong asked, "How are the inner disciples doing?" "I'm not too sure about that," replied Jing Yuankong. Yin Baikong nodded slightly and did not blame him. Of the two disciples, Jing Yuankong was mainly in charge of business matters. The eldest disciple, Sikong Ju, was in charge of the affairs of the sect's disciples. Some of the more secretive matters had always been handled by the eldest disciple, Sikong Ju. Jing Yuankong didn't care about it, which made him feel more at ease. In fact, Jing Yuankong had also concealed one thing. He knew that Guan Zhongkai had been forced to admit defeat by Yu Qianqiu, but he did not mention it. After all, he was the eldest senior brother's disciple. If he were to say it, he would be suspected of sowing discord. As for whether or not the paper could wrap up the fire, the responsibility would not fall on his head in the end. East Sea Everlasting Island. When the news of the 17 spirit stone mines in Huazhongming's territory being looted spread, cultivators from various countries were discussing it. It became the hottest topic on the island. In the deep mountains and valleys of Wuji Island, there was a constant rumbling sound. A phantom was flashing everywhere in the forest of rocks. Wherever the phantom went, the huge rocks would crumble into pieces. Man Hu and his fellow disciples were watching from the side of the cliff with their arms crossed. After a while, the rumbling stopped, and the phantom flashed up the cliff. A cloud of black mist gradually dissipated, revealing Yan Juexing's naked upper body. His muscles were incomparably sturdy. Compared to his previous skinny and weak self, he was like a completely different person. After receiving the clothes from Man Hu, Yan Juexing looked at the broken rocks in the valley and shook his head. "My demonic charm movement technique hasn't been able to make any progress. Looks like it won't work just by relying on external force. I need the help of the 7-star blood orchid. State Preceptor, where can I find 7 stalks of 7-star blood orchid?" Man Hu muttered. "I can think of a way to get 1 or 2 stalks, but I'm afraid it will be difficult to get 7 at once. Didn't you say that in the World Chamber of Commerce's upcoming cornucopia meeting, there is nothing you can't buy as long as you can afford it? I wonder if I can buy the 7-star blood orchid I need there?" Yan Juexing asked. "Don't worry, young palace master. I have already reported this matter to Master. Master will naturally pay attention to this matter. As long as the 7-star blood orchid appears, Master will definitely buy it at all costs," Man Hu said. Yan Juexing nodded, turned around and said with a smile, "I wonder if there is anything new in the various countries recently?" Man Hu and his fellow disciples looked at each other and found that this young palace master was becoming more and more concerned about the various countries. He would often ask questions. They didn't know what he was thinking, but he definitely wouldn't ask for no reason. They were afraid that there was an inside story that others didn't know. Something new happened yesterday. The 17 spirit stone mines in the Daong Kingdom were looted overnight. After that, all the spirit stone mines were destroyed. Man who said with a smile. Oh, Yan Juexing's eyes flickered for a while and said with a faint smile. Could it be that Hero did it again? Old Seven said strangely. Young Palace Master, how do you know that it was done by Hero? Hee. Seems like I guessed correctly. Yan Juexing looked back and thought that it wasn't the first time Yu Qianqiu did something like this. He had already done it when he was in China. This was completely Yu Qianqiu's style, stealing chickens and dogs and disturbing people's peace. Old Seven nodded repeatedly and said, Young Palace Master guessed correctly. It was done by that Hero. Damn it. I don't know who actually has the ability to rob 17 spirit stone mines in one night. Even Hua Zongming couldn't do anything to him. He's probably hopping mad right now. Man who waved his hand at Old Seven and turned around to ask, Young Palace Master, do you want to continue cultivating demonic arts or go back to rest? State Preceptor, I want to walk around the various countries. What do you think? Yan Juexing looked at the distant mountains and said slowly, What? The few of them said in surprise. They didn't know why he suddenly had such an idea. Yan Juexing turned around and said to the few of them with a faint smile, I often hear cultivators from various countries talking about the excitement of the cornucopia gathering. I really want to go and see if I can find the 7-star blood orchid I need. The few of them looked at each other. Man who frowned and said, The situation here is so tense. How can you leave, Young Palace Master? The cornucopia gathering is held once every 10 years. Young Palace Master might as well go next time. The situation is tense. Yan Juexing glanced at the few of them and sneered. Is it really tense? Why can't I see it at all? Although there are constant small battles, the various countries seem to prefer to waste time here. No one is willing to carry out the final battle. It doesn't matter if I'm here or not. This man who smiled bitterly and said, Young Palace Master, don't be anxious. There is a reason for this. Wait a year or two, and the various countries will definitely rush to attack. Oh. Yu Qianqiu walked to the edge of the cliff and kicked a stone. He watched him go down and said, What is the reason? Can State Preceptor tell me honestly? Man who thought for a moment and walked to stand beside him and said, This isn't a secret that can't be told. The various countries are all worried about the #1 expert in the world. By Changchun? Yan Juexing retracted his gaze and stared at him and asked, Didn't you say that he wouldn't interfere if the soul formation realm cultivators of the various countries didn't personally interfere with the affairs of the Huaxia cultivation world? Why do they have to worry about him? Although that's the case, everyone would rather wait another year or two. Why? It's good that everyone abides by the agreement, but if the various countries force the Huaxia cultivation world to a dead end, Bai Changchun can go to the various countries, even if he doesn't have to come to Huaxia. This was something that no one thought of at first. Only later did someone raise this doubt. The various countries thought that it would be better to wait for Bai Changchun to go to the East Holy Land. At that time, the various countries would join hands, and the Huaxia cultivation world wouldn't be able to resist. Man who explained. Yan Juexing sneered and didn't say anything. What did the various countries have to worry about? In the end, it was all because the soul formation realm cultivators were afraid that Bai Changchun would find trouble with them. Therefore, they would rather hide like a tortoise. Thinking about it, it was funny. There were so many soul formation realm experts, but they were actually scared by one person. He really didn't know what to say. As for why the Huaxia cultivation world didn't gather all their forces to take the opportunity to eliminate the forces of Limitless Island, it was probably because of their old habits. Everyone was dragging each other's back. If you don't take out your capital, why should I take out my capital? Yan Juexing was born and raised here. He was very clear about the old habits of the Huaxia cultivation world. He didn't know what to say. Since I have to wait another year or two, I might as well go to the various countries. This matter is decided. Yan Juexing didn't know if he was saying this to them or to himself. Man who said helplessly, Since Young Palace Master has decided to go, I will go and arrange it. The news of Yu Qianqiu leaving Deyang City had been spread by some people. All the cultivators were looking for him everywhere. Before the cornucopia meeting, the biggest event in the cultivation world. Killing Yu Qianqiu was the most important thing for the cultivators of various countries. The 2 treasured sabers on him were something everyone wanted. Whoever found Yu Qianqiu first would have the chance to get the 2 treasured sabers first. For a time, the search for Yu Qianqiu was carried out in the cultivation world. Yu Qianqiu naturally knew that his situation wasn't very good. He pulled third brother Xian along and tried to keep a low profile. Third brother Xian was willing to bear the burden and was not afraid of hard work. He took the initiative to bring Yu Qianqiu to hide here and there. He wanted to bring him safely to Lingfang Valley. Chapter 5:15. The 2 of them sneaked along the way, flying and hiding. From time to time, there were cultivators wandering around in the sky, and there were more and more signs. The 2 of them even found Foundation Establishment disciples searching in the sky on their flying swords. This kind of small cultivator couldn't stop the 2 of them, but it was clear that they only sent them as eyes and ears, and didn't intend to rely on them to kill Yu Qianqiu. But they couldn't touch them, because if they killed one, they would attract a whole bunch of others. There was no other way, they could only hide. This kind of searching method was very scary, and in the end, the 2 of them were forced to fly close to the ground in the deep mountains. They didn't dare to walk on the main road, and could only hide in the deep mountains. Occasionally, they would startle a flock of birds, and the 2 of them would quickly run far away, then hold their breath and hide. Soon, they could see more than 10 cultivators quickly flying over, searching everywhere in the dense forest. Third brother Xian, you go back to Spirit Fang Valley first, I have a way to escape. Yu Qianqiu didn't know how many times he said similar words. However, third brother Xian always had a solemn expression on his face as he firmly refused. No, you were originally hiding in Deyang City. If it wasn't because I insisted that you follow me to Lingfang Valley and exposed your whereabouts, you wouldn't have ended up in this state. He was talking about the day before, when the situation wasn't so critical. Because he randomly shouted in the mountains, it attracted an early tribulation passing cultivator to search. Third brother Xian was worried that if this person escaped, he would attract a large number of people, so he killed him on the spot. Who knew that the person who was killed had a restriction on him? This restriction was similar to the one that Yu Qianqiu used when he first went to Demon Ghost Domain to train. The person who searched must have carried a divine sense compass and knew everyone's whereabouts like the back of his hand. Once the person died, the other party immediately knew their whereabouts. This was good, it was like poking a hornet's nest. After startling a group of people, this group of people startled others, and cultivators from various countries heard the news and came. This was called a chase, so the 2 of them were forced to suffer. Yu Qianqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You can't be blamed for this. I can't hide in Deyang City forever. If I did, Hua Zhongming wouldn't have let me go. At least you won't be in danger in Deyang City for the time being. Third brother Xian stubbornly said. He was certain that he had implicated Yu Qianqiu. Third brother Xian, Uncle Xian, I'm begging you please leave first. I really have a way to get out of here. If you don't King leave, I'm going to be dragged to death by you. Yu Qianqiu was just short of kneeling down and begging him. It wasn't a good feeling to be chased all over the mountains. He really couldn't take it anymore. As long as third brother Xian left, he could immediately teleport back to Utopia. With the teleportation mark planted by the scouts, he could go anywhere with ease. Third brother Xian suddenly turned around and stared at him. His breathing became heavier and his eyes reddened. Yu Qianqiu was startled and asked suspiciously, What do you want? There aren't many people like you in the cultivation world. Third brother Xian shook his head and sighed. Yu Qianqiu was confused and asked blankly, What do you mean? What's wrong with me? You'd rather give up your own safety than drag others down. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Third brother Xian said emotionally. Yu Qianqiu bit a finger in his mouth. His expression was a little dazed. His thoughts had flown to the highest heavens. Damn it! You can buy people's hearts like this? Brother, although I'm older than you, please allow me to call you brother. Third brother Xian patted his chest and said, Today I, third brother Xian, will say this. As long as you can escape from this, if you encounter any trouble in the future, just mention the names of the 9 brothers of the Xian family. We're all brothers. As long as there's anything we can do, we'll go through fire and water for you. Really? Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. Your 9th brother is a soul-forming expert. He'll go through fire and water for me? Don't worry, we 9 brothers are of one mind. We admire people like you the most. 3rd brother Xian sighed again. There aren't many people like you in the cultivation world. The 2 of them were actually squatting on the branches of a big tree. Yu Qianqiu was like an ape, one hand holding onto the branch above his head. Sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves on his face. He plucked a leaf and spat it out, then plucked another one and spat it out. He didn't know what to say. After a long silence, Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. Sigh. Being unruly is just my appearance. I didn't expect you to see through my true nature today. I'm ashamed. Just then, a few whizzing sounds flew over their heads. The 2 of them immediately held their breath. From the sounds, they seemed to be at least in the middle stage of tribulation passing. Yu Qianqiu immediately turned hostile. He lowered his voice and shouted, 3rd brother Xing, get the hell out of here. We'll talk about your nonsense after we escape back to Lingfang Valley. Yu Qianqiu, scold me all you want. I understand your feelings. 3rd brother Xian looked at him affectionately and said, I'll be fine if I go out. But where can you go? You can't go anywhere. The entire cultivation world is looking for you. They're searching everywhere. At least if I'm here, I'll have a helper, right? Yu Qianqiu was startled. 3rd brother Xian's words reminded him of something. Even if he could teleport out, there were people searching everywhere. He was afraid that once he showed himself, he would be chased by a large group of people. It would be troublesome. We'll share blessings and misfortunes together. 3rd brother Xian pointed to the front and said with a determined look, Let's go out together. Yu Qianqiu looked in the direction he was pointing. He frowned and said, After 2 more mountains, we'll be in the Jinshan country, right? Yes. Pu Taidong's territory. Xian Laosen nodded with a thoughtful look on his face. The landscape of the Jinshan country gave them a headache, just thinking about it. 3rd brother Xian had been here more than once. Naturally he knew about it. Yu Qianqiu had read about it from a jade archive. There were almost no forests in the entire Jinshan country. There were only deserts and exposed rocky areas everywhere. Although the entire country seemed a little desolate, the most distinctive feature was the abundance of various mineral resources. In Yu Qianqiu's understanding, it was rich in all kinds of metals. The people in the country made a living by mining. All kinds of rare metals were highly sought after by the cultivation world. This was also where Pu Taidong's biggest source of income came from. But because there were no forests to hide, the terrain was too exposed. As soon as the 2 left the Daong country's territory, they would immediately be exposed to the eyes of the public. When that happened, it would be difficult to hide. This is troublesome. 3rd brother Xian frowned deeply. After we get out, run southwest. Yu Qianqiu said with a stern look on his face. 3rd brother Xian said in surprise. You mean to go to the Misty Forest? Yes. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, Let's go to the Misty Forest. 3rd brother Xian waved his hand and said, No. You came from the cultivation world of China. You might not know how powerful the Misty Forest is. The Eastern Holy Land, the Demon Domain, and the Misty Forest are the 3 forbidden areas of the cultivation world. Ordinary people can't go there. The Eastern Holy Land is mysterious and unpredictable. There is no return. There are countless demon ghosts in the Demon Domain, and the world's #1 expert oversees it. The Misty Forest is shrouded in 7-colored poisonous fog all year round. No one knows how deep it is. Even demigod experts are afraid to enter. At most, they can only enter by relying on their powerful cultivation. Yu Qianqiu had seen what he said in the Jade Archive left behind by Lu Wanwan. On the topographic map of the Jinshan country, this place was marked with a blank space. It only stated, the Misty Forest, a forgotten corner, shrouded in 7-colored poisonous fog all year round. Not worth paying attention to. Is there anything else besides the poisonous fog? Yu Qianqiu asked. I don't know. Third brother Xan recalled and said, "My master did enter the misty forest, but he only went to the surrounding area to pick some poisonous plants to refine pills. However, my master said that he heard the roar of some wild beast, but he couldn't be sure. It might have been the wind. Because the seven-colored fog is too poisonous, it's hard to imagine what kind of venomous insect could survive in there." Yu Qianqiu pondered for a while. Since there was nothing else, and he had taken the Rui pill, he shouldn't be afraid of the poison. Even if there was something strange, he could escape in time. A green flying sword flew out. Yu Qianqiu jumped down from the tree and landed on the flying sword. He said with a cold expression, "Third brother Xen, it's time for us to part. Return to Lingfang Valley first. I'll find you when the time comes." "No, we agreed to share fortune and misfortune together. How can I leave you alone?" Third brother Xen waved his hand and pointed to the side. "Worst comes to worst. We'll spend more time and take a detour. Once we reach Lingfang Valley, with my master around, no one will dare to enter." "Do you want me to hide in Lingfang Valley for the rest of my life?" Yu Qianqiu sneered. "If I really want to hide for the rest of my life, why would I hide in Lingfang Valley? Since everyone likes to play with me, I'll play with them. If I don't play until they stop, then my name isn't Yu Qianqiu." "What do you want to do?" Third brother Xan was stunned. Without saying anything, Yu Qianqiu rode his flying sword close to the ground and quickly flew through the forest. Third brother Xan paused for a while, then quickly chased after him. After hiding for a while, the two of them finally crossed two mountains. When they reached the dense forest at the foot of the mountain, they stopped. Looking from the forest, the lush green had gradually faded away. The gravel formed a desolate land in front of them. There were more than 10 people in the air, watching the forest closely. Occasionally, there were people flying over them. "What do you want to do?" Third brother Xan whispered in his ear. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered as he pondered. He didn't answer him. According to the map, the dense fog forest was about 50 miles away from here if he went southwest. With his speed, he would definitely be stopped by an expert who was faster than him. And then he would attract a large group of people to attack him. It seemed like he could only let third brother Xan temporarily lure the enemy to buy some time for himself. Chapter 516. Third brother Xan, I need to discuss something with you. What is it? Third brother Xan looked around vigilantly and leaned his head closer. After you get out, run towards the northwest and help me distract them. Then I will secretly follow behind. Don't look at me like that. Don't worry, I won't go to the mist forest. You just need to distract them, and I will be able to sneak out. Don't worry. Didn't you see that they surrounded Deyang City like an iron bucket? I still managed to escape. Third brother Xan thought about it and agreed. He still couldn't figure out how Yu Qianqiu managed to escape from Deyang City, but he still asked worriedly, "Are you sure you can do it?" Yes. Yu Qianqiu took out an ordinary black iron flying sword and handed it to him. "Use this to escape later, or else we will be exposed. And this, wrap it." He pulled out a large piece of black cloth and covered third brother Xan's head with it. Seeing how meticulous he was, third Xan started to believe that he really had a way to escape. He pulled the black cloth to cover his face and nodded to indicate that he was ready. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said without hesitation, "Go. Be careful." Third brother Xan stepped on his flying sword and flew out of the forest towards the northwest direction. Just as he got out, someone shouted, "Over there!" The dozens of people who stopped in the air quickly chased after him. "Awah!" Someone let out a long howl and called for his fellow sect members. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Yu Qianqiu hid below and stared at the sky. In the blink of an eye, there were hundreds of people flying over his head. This was obviously only a small portion of the people who were chasing after him. He couldn't help but grit his teeth in anger. Using such a big scene, they were trying to put me to death. I like it, so I won't feel guilty when the time comes. A ruthless glint flashed across Yu Qianqiu's face. He waited until the sky became quiet for a short period of time. Then, he rushed toward the southwest without saying a word, flying along the gravel ground of the Gobi Desert. Flying as low as possible would reduce the chances of being discovered. On the other side, Third brother Xian was leading the way, attracting a large group of people. Third brother Xian suddenly felt a little excited. This was the first time he was being chased by so many people. But this was all thanks to Yu Qianqiu. However, his pursuer was not an idiot. After chasing for a while, he immediately realized that something was wrong. With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, how could he fly so fast? Someone shouted, "Who's that?" At this moment, the sounds of fighting suddenly came from the southwest direction. Not good, it's a diversion. Yu Qianqiu is over there. Someone shouted. Everyone looked in the direction of his finger and saw dozens of people chasing after a figure flying close to the ground. A dense mass of green shadows blocked the pursuers. There was no need to guess. Those dense masses of green shadows were Yu Qianqiu's signature flying swords. Without the need for orders, the hundreds of people immediately stopped. One of the people in front shouted, "Cut in and block his way. We've been waiting for a long time. We can't let anyone take advantage of us." A group of people whizzed forward, intending to cut off Yu Qianqiu's path. Once the pursuers met up with the people blocking the way, they would naturally be able to surround Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu flew as fast as he could, cursing in his heart. Who would have thought that as soon as he flew out, a group of people would come over and discover him? They immediately chased after him. What else could he do? He released a bunch of flying swords to stop them and ran. Actually, he was right to choose the southwest direction. There were people blocking him in all the other directions, except the southwest direction. Because the mist forest was in that direction, it was a natural barrier. There was no need to waste manpower to guard there. Take third brother Xian for example. Just when there was no one chasing after him, a few people came whistling through the air in front of him. Without saying a word, they joined hands with their flying swords and attacked him wildly. Third brother Xian dodged with a teleportation and cursed, "You old bastards, just you wait. I'll settle the score with you after this is over." As soon as he teleported away, the others felt something was wrong. Someone recognized the voice and shouted, "Stop fighting. It's third brother Xian." In the distance there were continuous bangs. Green lights flashed. The few of them looked at each other and ignored third brother Xian's curses. They quickly rushed to the place where the fight was happening. As long as they could get the two swords, it would be a great contribution. Even if the Xian brothers wanted to deal with them, their master would protect them. Third brother Xian stopped in the air. He looked at the direction of the fight. He was stunned. The strong wind blew the black cloth off his body. His eyes were wet. He muttered to himself emotionally, "You lied to me. We said we'd share blessings and misfortunes together. Why did you bear the hardship alone? Yu Qianqiu, you lied to me." Third brother Xian screamed at the sky. He lost control of the flying sword under his feet. His silhouette flashed and with a whoosh, he quickly rushed to the place where the fight was happening. The dozens of people chasing him did not have high cultivation. Other than the 10 who were at the early stage of passing calamity, the rest were about the same level as Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu's 1,000 flying swords killed more than 10 original infant stage cultivators. As for the rest, Yu Qianqiu was confident that he could kill them all. But now was not the time to fight them. It would be troublesome if the others arrived. He was already halfway there. He could faintly see a rainbow in the distance. It was quiet, desolate, beautiful, and mysterious. It should be the forgotten corner of the world, the fog forest. The middle stage tribulation transcendence realm cultivators, who were chasing Yu Qianqiu, suddenly saw a large group of people coming from the northwest. They exchanged glances, and with a speed that was even faster than Yu Qianqiu's, they dashed in front of him. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, dodged left and right with his exquisite sword control skills. He managed to evade the slashes of the sword auras, and continued to fly forward without a care for his life. It seemed like he wanted to reach the fog forest at all costs. But because he was flying close to the ground, the gravel exploded on his body, making him grimace in pain. "A bunch of bastards. Just you wait. If I don't take revenge, I am not a man." Yu Qianqiu growled, gnashing his teeth. Since they had already been discovered, there was no longer any need for them to fly close to the ground. Otherwise, even if they were not killed by the other party, they would end up with a bloody nose and a swollen face. He quickly flew up on his sword and increased his flying altitude. With a muffled roar, he activated his sword art. The 1,000 flying swords formed a 2-meter-wide rectangular sword array and wrapped him in it. The cyan rectangular sword array rotated quickly. A cyan whirlwind carried him forward quickly. It was a spectacular scene. The few people who were fighting and flying in front of him had just attacked a few flying swords in the rotating sword array when the other flying swords came flying at them. Just the formation alone was enough to give them a fright, and they quickly dodged. The flying swords that were hit away quickly returned to the sword array and protected Yu Qianqiu as he moved forward quickly. The few of them attacked one after another, but they could not do anything to Yu Qianqiu. He did not even stop to fight with them, and only cared about charging forward. Looking at the hundreds of people flying towards them, the few of them became anxious. One of them shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, leave your treasured saber and we will let you go. We will spare your life. Spare your mother. You trash, come and take it if you have the ability." Yu Qianqiu cursed. Suddenly, he noticed a large group of people blocking his way. He felt helpless. If he had not been delayed by these bastards and wasted some time, he would have already charged in. Looking in all directions, there were many people rushing over. They were densely packed, and they were all flying towards this place. It seemed like all the people chasing him had heard the news and were here. In front of him, the misty fog forest was surging with illusory colors. It was a vast, mysterious, and boundless world. Like a seductive young lady, she was shrouded in a colorful and mysterious veil. For countless years, countless people wanted to remove this mysterious veil and kiss this young lady. However, behind the seduction was a naked ruthlessness. In the end, people flinched and gradually forgot about this mysterious young lady. Since they could not kiss her, they might as well forget about her. Originally, it was rare for anyone to come to this place for thousands of years. Wind and frost carved out a desolate aura in this field made of gravel, telling the occasional visitor that this place had been quiet for a very, very long time. However, this silence was broken today. Yu Qianqiu's crazy charge forward made the people blocking him guess something. Among the hundreds of people blocking him, there were more than 10 who were far ahead of the people behind them. This proved that their cultivation was higher than the others. Not good. This kid is going all out. He would rather die in the fog forest than let the treasured saber fall into the hands of others. One of them expressed his judgment. "Hee, you want to die? It's not that easy. Even if you want to die, you have to leave the treasured saber behind." Another person laughed sinisterly. As they spoke, they completely exposed the nature of the cultivation world, where the strong preyed on the weak. The cultivators of the various countries have heard the news and are here. Hurry up just in case. We will stop him first. Those behind follow up. Let's go. The person who was flying the fastest shouted. Since he was able to command everyone, it was obvious that he was the leader of this group of people. More than 10 people disappeared on the spot at the same time. They appeared in front of them once, then disappeared and appeared again. More than 10 people used teleportation at the same time. This meant that all of them were experts at the end of the tribulation passing stage. It was obvious that this group of people was determined to get the treasures. After teleporting 3 times, they lined up in front of the bewitching fog forest. They coldly looked at the spinning cyan sword formation that was rushing towards them. Naturally, the one inside the formation was Yu Qianqiu, their target. They were originally about the same distance from Yu Qianqiu to the fog forest. Moreover, their flying speed was obviously faster than Yu Qianqiu's. However, just in case, they actually teleported to intercept him. The 700 to 800 people behind them had already flocked over and lined up behind the 10 people. The person in the lead stared at the people who were entangled with Yu Qianqiu and let out a cold laugh. He waved his hand and said, "Go, chase away those flies behind us. At the same time, cut off all of that kid's escape routes. The treasures are ours." Almost 200 people immediately flashed behind him and surrounded him. Chapter 517. Within the territory of Jinshang country, only the master of this place, Pu Taidong, could mobilize 700 to 800 cultivators, and use 14 masters at the final stage of nature's test at once. When they were in the territory of Daong country, Pu Taidong didn't send anyone deep into the country because of his relationship with Hua Zongming. However, he sent a large number of people to block the border between the two countries and silently guard here. As long as Yu Qianqiu came here, he couldn't escape from their sight. What made these people rejoice was that Yu Qianqiu was really capable. He actually managed to escape from the encirclement of Deyang City. It was simply a miracle. Since God had given him such a big gift, how could they let him slip away again? Of course not. The leader was Pu Taidong's first disciple by Meng. He secretly decided that he couldn't miss this opportunity. He must give the two treasured swords to his master. With a wave of his hand, 200 disciples surrounded the dozen people who were entangling with Yu Qianqiu. Fellow cultivators of Hassa, get out of the way. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. It was Bai Meng's first disciple Dian Yuming who said this. The situation was stronger than the person. With a large number of people led by his master behind him, he was more confident. The people who were entangling with Yu Qianqiu all changed their expressions. They also understood that the situation was stronger than the person. They all stopped and didn't dare to act rashly. They were cultivators of Hassa. This time, they also sent nearly 100 people, including 5 or 6 masters at the final stage of nature's test. However, the top masters were not in this direction. When they arrived, it would be too late. But there was no other way. It was better than dying. It was just a pity for the dozen people who were killed by Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes. There was a fierce light in his eyes. Although he saw that the dozen people could teleport and knew that they were masters at the final stage of nature's test, he didn't slow down and kept rushing forward. The misty forest with surging dreamy colors was just behind them. As long as he could get through it, he would have a place to stand and play with them slowly. Humph! He doesn't know what's good for him. Bai Meng waved his hand again and said, "Stop him before the others arrive. I'm afraid that something might happen if I delay." The 500 to 600 cultivators behind him rushed forward one after another. In an instant, flying swords fell like rain and silver lightning roared crazily. They interweaved into a magnificent silver net and swept forward. Even though Yu Qianqiu had 1,000 flying swords, he would not be able to gain the upper hand against 500 to 600 flying swords that were controlled individually. Concentrating on controlling one sword was definitely better than controlling thousands of swords at once. Kaka. Yu Qianqiu continued to charge towards the hundreds of flying swords with a sinister smile on his face. His violent nature, which was bound to explode under pressure, was revealed without a doubt. He charged forward without fear of death. When he was about 100 meters away from the opposite flying sword, he rushed forward with his arms wide open and shouted, "Star Flame Fire Art!" At this point he had no choice but to fight, unless he retreated back to Utopia. However, they were destined to have a showdown today, so how could they cower? If they wanted to run, they would have done so long ago. Since the other party wanted to force him into a dead end, then there was no need for him to pretend to be kind. From today onwards, they would not stop until one of them was dead. Those who were afraid of death would leave, and those who weren't would continue to play to the end. Boom! A cyan storm suddenly exploded. Cyan flames swept away the clouds and rushed out unscrupulously, spreading rapidly. The scorching heat crazily flooded in all directions in a split second. The thousands of flying swords instantly flashed back into the flames, disappearing without a trace. A huge green light shone between the heaven and earth. Even though the group of people had heard that this guy knew how to do this, when they saw it for themselves, it was simply shocking. They could not imagine how a person could store such a large amount of flames in his body. The people surrounding him were shocked and involuntarily retreated from the high temperature. The 500 to 600 flying swords were instantly swallowed by the surging green flames. The expressions of the 500 to 600 people changed. The moment the flying swords rushed into the sea of flames, they immediately lost contact with them. It seemed like they had been disarmed by the other party in an instant. Facing the surging green flames, the 500 to 600 people had no choice but to retreat. Use the sword intent to break his fire. Bai Meng shouted because everyone knew that Chu Dingfang's sword intent had broken the green flames. It was obvious that the sword intent was not afraid of the high temperature of the green flames. 14 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage flashed to the front. 14 heaven-raising swords appeared, wanting to shred the surging green flames into pieces. Don't! Third Exion's sorrowful cry came from afar. He clearly saw the 14 heaven-raising swords, and could tell that these 14 people were experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage. With 14 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage joining hands, it was hard to imagine what would happen to Yu Qianqiu. If you want to break my green flames, then I will break your sword intent. Within the green flames, Yu Qianqiu shook his sleeves. Slippery black shadows continuously flashed out from his sleeves and hovered in front of him. The instant the 14 heaven-raising swords chopped down, Yu Qianqiu pushed out his palms and shouted, "Kill!" Just as the 14 huge transparent sword intent chopped down with a strong wind and broke the green flames, a group of densely packed black shadows suddenly shot out from the green flames like lightning. What did it mean to destroy everything? What did it mean to destroy everything? What did it mean to be successful in every endeavor? Today, Yu Qianqiu's black flame flying swords would give Pu Taidong, the disciple of a mid-divine transformation stage expert, a wonderful demonstration. Back then, Yu Qianqiu relied on the black flame flying swords to defeat 2 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage in the Battle of Wanghai Town in Huaxia. From then on, Yu Qianqiu regarded the black flame flying sword as a supreme treasure, and he treated it as his trump card. He wouldn't easily use it unless it was a critical moment, because once it was used, it would kill. This was his trump. Now, everyone in the cultivation world wanted to force him into a dead end. The killing intent in his heart was boiling. Since everyone in the world has betrayed me, why should I think of myself as a sentimental person? Kill! Swish, swish, swish. Hiss, hiss, hiss. As dense as rain, the black shadows flashed. The 14 sword intent disintegrated in an instant and disappeared without a trace. The collapse was so sudden that the 14 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage found it hard to believe. The pupils of the 14 people suddenly shrank as they saw the densely packed black dots shooting toward them. They were all pure black flying swords. They were unbelievably sharp, cutting through the sword intent, as if they were cutting paper. Among the 14 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage, a few reacted quickly. Protective aura surged out to block the flying swords. Bai Meng saw this from the corner of his eyes and was instantly shocked. If the black flying swords could so easily break through the sword intent, then no matter how strong the protective aura was, it would not be difficult to break through it. There's something strange about the flying swords. Don't fight them head-on. As Bai Meng shouted, he quickly flew into the air. A few people who did not set up protective aura also saw the clues and quickly flew into the air. At this moment, life and death could be decided in an instant. It was too late for the 5 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage, who had protective aura. In addition, they had protective aura, so they couldn't even teleport. They just bounced up. Ah! 5 shrill screams were heard. The protective aura was instantly pierced through by the flying swords, and it did not have any effect on blocking the attacks. The bodies of the 5 people trembled in the air. They were pierced by the flying swords like sieves, and their bodies were full of bloody holes. Then, like kites with broken strings, they fell straight to the ground. However, before their bodies fell to the ground, they were swallowed by the surging green flames. It was impossible to see them again, not even their ashes. 7th junior brother, 3rd junior brother, 9th junior brother. Bai Meng and the others who had just jumped into the air all cried out in pain. At this moment, another 5 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage appeared. They were the people who had stopped 3rd Exien and attacked together. These 5 people were the 5 top masters from Hasa. They couldn't wait to stabilize their bodies and stop in the air. They looked at each other. They saw the scene just now with their own eyes. The green flames surged and the black swords rained fiercely, killing 5 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage in an instant. Although they weren't familiar with the 5 people who died, they had met them before. The 5 people who died were also at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage like them, and the number of people who died was the same as them. The 5 people were frightened and didn't dare to rush over again. It was better to wait and see first. Third Exian, who followed closely, also stopped beside the 5 people. He looked at all of this with his eyes wide open, and he couldn't wrap his head around it for a long time. Oh my! This guy killed 5 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage in an instant. The 500 to 600 people who saw it with their own eyes were even more shocked. How was it possible? In the blink of an eye, 5 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage died just like that? Run! Someone in the crowd screamed, and everyone immediately scattered in panic. After the black swords killed the 5 people, they didn't stop at all. First they scattered, thinking that they were going to chase by Meng and the others. Then they suddenly turned around and surrounded the 500 to 600 people behind them. That scene. The 500 to 600 people were scared out of their wits. They were disarmed by Qing He just now, and didn't even have a weapon in their hands. Everyone was shocked by the situation just now, and they were suddenly attacked like this. It was really fatal. It wasn't that they didn't have a way out. The way out was right behind them. The misty forest that was shining with psychedelic colors. For them, what was the difference between this and having no way out? For a moment, everyone took out everything in their storage pouches that they could use to block the attack. Hee hee. A sinister laughter came from the green sea of fire, and the densely packed black flying swords madly strangled them. In an instant, the wailing and wailing made everyone who heard it tremble. The bloody scene of the massacre would give people nightmares at night. It could only be described as too horrible to look at. None of the things they took out could block the strangling of the black flying swords. When this black sword net fell, only the 100 people who reacted quickly at the beginning escaped. None of the remaining 400 to 500 people were spared. Limbs were broken, and flesh and blood were flying everywhere. Yu Qianqiu, stop! Bai Meng clenched his fists tightly, and used all his strength to shout for them to stop. Chapter 518. Apart from the direction of the misty forest, cultivators from other countries, who were chasing after Yu Qianqiu, arrived one after another. However, they were all baffled by the miserable cries. More and more people arrived, but they all gathered at the outskirts. No one approached. Compared to the people who rushed over in a hurry before, they were like 2 different people. The people who arrived later did not understand what was going on. They asked the people who arrived first what was going on. After getting the answer, they were all dumbfounded. Hearing Bai Meng's sorrowful cry, everyone was silent. They all decided to wait and see. Bai Meng's cry was met with Yu Qianqiu's sneer from within the sea of fire. There's something wrong with your head. The black flying swords continued to kill. Bai Meng and the others could only watch. They wanted to help, but when they thought of the unstoppable power of the flying swords, they were powerless to approach. They were already scared out of their wits by the black flying swords. The few hundred people below were almost completely wiped out. The remaining people were forced into a dead end by the black sword net. They had no choice but to release their protective aura and charge into the colorful and thin fog behind them. They tried to hold on for a while, and then come out again. What came as quite a surprise to the spectators was that the mysterious and fearsome mist forest wasn't as terrifying as they had imagined. Those people actually managed to survive in a hopeless situation. Even the protective aura of nascent soul cultivators could be used. Withstanding the protective aura, they really managed to run out from the other end. Everyone guessed that it might be because the fog at the outskirts was thin, and the poison was not strong. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to escape so easily. After all, the misty forest that had been legendary for countless years was not a joke. With an example, almost everyone died. The remaining few dozen people no longer hesitated. They all released their protective aura and rushed in. The ground was covered with broken limbs, dismembered corpses, and a pool of blood. As the green sea of fire blew past, everything was instantly turned into ashes. The bloody history just now was completely erased. The road ahead was unobstructed. Yu Qianqiu successfully charged into the colorful fog. That surging green sea of flames gradually disappeared, along with Yu Qianqiu in the seven-colored fog. The black flying swords also disappeared in their wake. Perhaps it was because of the heat, but the color of the fog had become thicker. Previously, they could see dozens of meters away, but now they could only see 1 or 2 meters away. Bai Meng's group of 9 landed in front of the misty forest. Their faces were ashen. In total, there were close to 800 people. These were the rising stars of the sect, the future backbone of the sect. But looking at it now, there were only about 300 people left. Yu Qianqiu had single-handedly massacred nearly 500 people. The most distressing thing was that 5 experts at the end of the crossing tribulation stage had died just like that. Bai Meng's entire body was trembling uncontrollably, his fists clenched to the point of cracking sounds. If he had killed Yu Qianqiu and obtained the treasured saber, it would still be acceptable. But in the end, he did not obtain anything and instead caused such a huge loss. How was he going to explain this to his master when he returned? Thousands of people had gathered in the surrounding air. At this time, they all landed one after another. Looking at the pile of ashes on the ground, they all shook their heads and sighed. At the same time, they secretly felt lucky that they did not block Yu Qianqiu first. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. No one had expected that Yu Qianqiu could be so powerful. It happened almost in an instant. Nearly 500 people, including 5 cultivators at the end of the crossing tribulation stage, were killed just like cutting melons and vegetables. Especially the 10 cultivators of Hassa, who were lucky enough to survive, and began to chase Yu Qianqiu. They were even more frightened. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu had not been serious with them. Otherwise, none of them would have been able to escape. These people glanced at the people of Jinshan country, who all had deathly pale expressions, and couldn't help but gloat secretly. They thought it was good that they died. Who told them to be so arrogant at the beginning? They were rushing to die. However, they still had to thank them. Otherwise, no one would know who the ashes on the ground belonged to. The muscles on third brother Xian's face twitched. He didn't know how many trump cards this guy had. The absorbing stars technique was scary enough, and now he had a batch of black flying swords. Even cultivators at the end of the crossing tribulation stage could be killed as easily as cutting cabbages. Thinking that he was also at the end of the crossing tribulation stage, he couldn't help but shiver. He knew his bad temper very well. If he didn't need Yu Qianqiu's help, he would have fallen out with this guy many times. If they really fought, third brother Xian didn't dare to think about what would happen next. Brother Bai Meng, I'm sorry for your loss. Brother Bai Meng, don't be sad. There will be a chance for revenge eventually. People who knew Bai Meng all comforted him. Although their words sounded nice, they didn't know how many of them were sincere. There was also someone who snorted. This guy probably died when he entered the fog forest. It's a pity that those 2 treasured sabers are going to be lost in the vast fog forest. At this point, that person was slightly startled. He seemed to have thought of something. He looked around and realized that everyone was thinking about the same thing as him. Everyone was reminded by his words. If Yu Qianqiu really died in there, they wouldn't dare to go in and look for him with their cultivation. However, the soul formation stage masters behind them could go in and look for him with their high cultivation. Everyone looked around with flickering eyes. They memorized the direction where Yu Qianqiu entered and prepared to wait. If Yu Qianqiu really didn't come out, this direction was the best place to find the treasured sabers. They could go back and report to their masters. What's wrong with them? Among the people looking around, someone suddenly pointed at the disciples beside Bai Meng and asked in surprise. Everyone looked over, only to see the dozens of people standing together, all of them silent and motionless under the crowd's gesticulations. His expression was ordinary, but his face was glowing with a sparkling luster. The skin on his face looked even better than a woman's, and he had a delicate and alluring charm. Bai Meng and the others were stunned as well. Fifth junior brother Lu Jinyang, who was by his side, frowned and said, "What's wrong with all of you?" In the end, even after he shouted a few times, those several tens of people still didn't move. and this was slightly unusual. Lu Zhenyang slowly walked over and stood in front of the dozens of people. He found that their bright eyes were shining brightly, but they seemed to have no one in their eyes. They didn't even look at him, an elder of the sect standing in front of them. Disrespecting one's elders? If it was just one person, it would still be acceptable. However, if all of them did the same, it would be impossible for something like this to happen. Lu Zhenyang walked over and raised his hand, wanting to pat one of them. Yet he heard Bai Meng shout, "Junior Marshal brother, don't touch it with your hands." Lu Zhenyang's hand hung there, not knowing what was going on. Bai Meng said in a low voice, "They are all disciples who just came out of the misty forest. They might have been poisoned." When everyone heard this, they all whispered to each other and nodded, obviously agreeing with Bai Meng's words. Lu Zhenyang was shocked and didn't dare to touch it anymore. If he was infected by a deadly poison, it wouldn't be fun. Taking a few steps back, he raised his hand and snapped his fingers. With a whoosh, a gust of wind shot out and hit one of the people's face. He had grasped the appropriate amount of strength. This gust of wind that he shot out would at most cause the person to have a bloody nose and a swollen face. There wouldn't be any other consequences. However, what surprised him was that the disciple's skin color wasn't just tender and alluring. It had really reached the point where it could be broken by a blow. With a light due sound, a pitch-black hole appeared on the disciple's face, giving Lu Zhenyang a fright. How could this be? I didn't hit so hard. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. From the hole on the disciple's face, pitch-black dirty water started to flow out. It flowed down his cheeks and dyed his clothes black. Just as the dirty water flowed out, wrinkles started to appear on the smooth skin on his face. Then, starting from his head, he started to shrink. Then he swayed unsteadily and slowly fell backwards. The people standing behind him were knocked down by him, and also fell down unsteadily. One by one, dozens of people fell down in an instant. And when those people fell down, they were immediately like brittle paper bags filled with water. After falling to the ground, they couldn't withstand the pressure and burst open. Hua hua! The dirty water flowed all over the ground, and the people nearby all took a few steps back to avoid it. Those who fell down were all stuck to the ground like paper, soaked in the dirty water. A disgusting stench started to spread in the air. Everyone frowned, and at the same time they were secretly shocked. What a powerful poison! In such a short period of time, other than the skin on the surface of the body, the blood, flesh, and bones all turned into black dirty water, and the outside became even brighter and brighter. Everyone looked at the dense fog forest again, and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The colorful fog of the dense fog forest looked gorgeous and colorful, but it contained a deadly poison. Looking at the people who were still poisoned, they still looked bright on the outside. Who could imagine that their insides were actually a puddle of pitch-black dirty water? Why is it like this? Lu Zhenyang muttered to himself and looked at his hand that flicked out the wind. Although he knew that these disciples were poisoned to death, he felt that he was the main culprit. In the blink of an eye, that flick of his finger caused another dozens of disciples to disappear. The remaining close to 300 cultivators of Jinshan country all had deathly pale faces. Everyone was silent out of fear, and no one said a word. It would probably take a long time for the shadow hanging over their heads to disappear. Bai Meng's breathing gradually became heavy. He suddenly raised his hand and slapped out a strong wind, slapping the remaining few poisoned disciples, causing everyone to once again witness a disgusting scene. Bai Meng walked with large strides to the front of the dense fog forest and shouted angrily, "You Qianqiu, come out for me if you have the guts." He shouted at the top of his lungs a few times, but only heard his voice travel far away, and no one responded. The cultivators of the surrounding countries all shook their heads and sighed. This Bai Meng was probably mad with anger. That Yu Qianqiu had already been in there for such a long time, and the odds were against him. However, Yu Qianqiu's actions were a bit strange. Since he had such extraordinary ability, why didn't he break out of the encirclement? Why did he have to enter this place of death? It was really unimaginable. Third Exian looked into the depths of the fog and kept muttering to himself, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault." Lu Zhenyang tightened his lips and went over to pull Bai Meng. Eldest senior brother. It has already happened. We need to think about it at length. Just as the two of them turned around, Yu Qianqiu's sinister laughter suddenly came from the dense fog forest. What are you shouting for? I have always had guts. If you don't believe me, I'll show you. Take this. Chapter 519. Everyone was stunned. That guy didn't die. Third brother Xian's expression was even more interesting. It could only be described as winking. Everyone was still in a daze. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A large number of black shadows shot out from the thick fog. Ah! It's a flying sword run. One person screamed. Everyone was shocked and quickly dodged. Yu Qianqiu's flying sword was not an ordinary flying sword. Hundreds of lives had been taken as a warning, and there were still 5 cultivators at the final stage of crossing tribulation. Whoever didn't run was a coward. However, there were nearly 5,000 cultivators chasing after Yu Qianqiu. Those at the final stage of crossing tribulation were fine, as they teleported into the air. However, most of the cultivators were not at the final stage of crossing tribulation. It was not a problem for them to run in an orderly manner. But what was the scene of 5,000 people flying around randomly? They were even more headless than headless flies. It was really a mess, so much so that many people flew up and were knocked down again. Bloody noses and swollen faces were not suitable for cultivators. But in order to escape, there were many who fought and kicked. Some people pulled, some people kicked. Who asked you to block my way? There was a lot of shouting and cursing. The result of this chaos could be imagined. Thousands of black flame flying swords shot out like lightning and strangled people. There was no need to deliberately control them. All they had to do was rush into the crowd and shoot randomly. Magic tools and magic treasures were all useless. They could not block the attack of the black flying swords at all. All the obstacles were so fragile that they were easily defeated. The shouting and cursing immediately turned into wailing and screaming. They cried so hard that the sky and earth almost changed color. This scene was even more spectacular than the previous 500 people. This time it was 5,000 people, and it was called a rain of blood. Not to mention the rain of blood. Even the broken limbs and other body parts were like rain. Blood was everywhere, and everyone's eyes were bloodshot. The more they ran around, the more opportunities the flying swords had. Those at the final stage of crossing tribulation, who flashed into the air, were shocked by this tragic scene. Among the 5,000 people, those who were lucky enough to escape were floating in the air, watching the flying swords dismembering people in the midst of the fleeing crowd. They did not feel lucky, they only felt a chill down their spine, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Massacre. It was a massacre. Yu Qianqiu had gone mad. He had no regard for human life. What they didn't think about was whether they had gone mad when more than 5,000 people forced Yu Qianqiu into a dead end. He ignored his own heartlessness, but it was difficult for him to accept the heartlessness of others. Even third brother Xian, who was watching everything from the sky, turned pale with fright. Yu Qianqiu was too crazy. He didn't seem to have the slightest intention of showing mercy. His flying sword was mercilessly killing, as if he didn't want to let a single one of them go. Everyone had been in the cultivation world for quite a long time. Among those who could participate in this direct pursuit, there were no core formation stage cultivators, not counting the informants. They were at least nascent soul stage cultivators. Think about it, for everyone to be able to make it to this day in the cultivation world, who didn't have a few lives on their hands. Even dozens of lives or hundreds of lives would not be a rare case. But those were accumulated. Probably not many had personally killed more than 100 people at once. However, the scene in front of them made these old fellows who thought that they were experienced and knowledgeable, completely dumbfounded. This was a completely aimless, inhumane, and reckless massacre. Everyone suddenly thought of the name, Yu Qianqiu, and they trembled in fear. A nightmare-like seed was quietly planted in their hearts. The more people they killed, the wider their field of vision became. Without too many obstacles, the remaining people finally ran away covered in blood. Their clothes were drenched in blood. They ran far away and didn't want to look back. It was too terrifying. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding in the colorful fog, was also a little stunned. It wasn't because he was scared by the number of people he killed, but because he didn't expect the result of this sudden attack to be so good. It was unexpected. Out of these 5,000 people, almost 2,000 had lost their lives to his flying sword. Recalling the flying sword, he quickly hid first, so as not to be killed by the other party. Yu Qianqiu once again sneakily disappeared into the rainbow-colored clouds. The flying swords that had been slaughtering for a while also slipped away. The people in the air looked at the bloody scene on the gravel desert below, and they couldn't recover for a long time. Complete corpses were rarely seen, and the dismembered corpses were almost all dismembered corpses. The wind of the wilderness took away the strong smell of blood, and it didn't take long for more than a dozen eagles to circle in the air. A moment later, a few large bald vultures flew over. These scavengers were not afraid of the humans in the air at all. Seeing the feast that could fill their stomachs below them, they swaggered down without any scruples. There was a lot of food, which was rare in this desolate land, so everyone didn't have to fight for it. Their sharp claws pressed the corpses, and their hook-like sharp beaks tore off a piece of flesh and raised their heads to swallow it. The cautious eagles, seeing that the vultures were safe, let out a cheerful cry and swooped down one by one. However, it was these cheerful cries that woke everyone up and brought disaster to them. When everyone discovered that these feathered beasts were actually eating the corpses of their fellow disciples, they were immediately furious. A flying sword shot out, and a vulture was cut into two. Following that, countless flying swords shot out, and the anger that they couldn't vent on Yu Qianqiu was vented on these feathered beasts. In an instant, they were all slaughtered, and feathers flew in the air. Then, the leading cultivators of the various countries gathered their disciples to count how many people they had lost, and the result was not optimistic. However, there were also people who were slightly relieved, because their people were originally standing on the periphery, and none of them survived. There was joy, and naturally there was sadness. The most tragic thing was that other than the late-stage tribulation passing experts of their own country, all the disciples of the sect were wiped out, and not a single one survived. Most of them suffered heavy losses, and there were still a few people left in the sect. What should they do? Everyone looked at each other in a daze. When they came to seize the treasure, they were full of confidence, and thought that it would not be a problem to deal with Yu Qianqiu. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu caused heavy losses to each country, and the price was too heavy, especially those countries who had rushed here in a hurry, and had not done anything. Just because they got close to watch, they suffered an undeserved disaster. It really made people want to cry, but have no tears. They didn't get anything, and so many people died. How should they explain it back? This was the common thought of the leaders of the various countries. Yu Qianqiu, get out of here. Ji Fenglu, a cultivator at the late stage of tribulation passing from the Yasa country, roared at the misty forest. The Yasa country didn't do anything to you, and you actually killed all my disciples. What's the reason? Get out of here. I want to fight to the death with you. Beside him stood two pale junior brothers, who were also at the late stage of tribulation passing, and they seemed to be a little weak. There were nearly 100 people who came with them, but they were all killed just now, leaving only the three of them alone. It would be strange if they weren't angry. In the misty forest, Yu Qianqiu's surprised voice came. No way. I don't even know the people of the Yasa country. Why would I kill them for no reason? Judging from the voice, this guy was hiding very far away, at least a few hundred meters away from the edge of the forest. It seemed that he was very careful. We came with more than 100 people, and now there are only 3 of us left. How dare you deny it? Ji Fenglu roared again. Yu Qianqiu, if you have the guts, come out and fight to the death with me. Don't be a coward. Don't tell me that you brought more than 100 people from thousands of miles away, just to chat and brag to me. Are you trying to scare me? You brought so many people to chat with me? Who are you trying to fool? Damn it. If I don't make the first move, should I let you thousands of people make the first move? Bah. I'm wrong. In fact, it was you who made the first move. I was forced to fight back. A group of inhumane bastards. Yu Qianqiu cursed. Ji Fenglu was rendered speechless by his words. In reality, they were here to kill Yu Qianqiu and steal his treasures. This was something that everyone was well aware of. Otherwise, with thousands of people, who would have nothing better to do and come here to play, Ji Fenglu could not argue. So he continued to roar to vent his anger. Yu Qianqiu, coward, come out. Old dog. Is your head on your butt? Who's the coward? Yu Qianqiu laughed and scolded. I'm sitting here like a clock, facing thousands of people without retreating. Look at you cowards. Who dares to come in and fight to the death with me? Is there anyone? None of you. I just casually showed my hand. And you were scared to the point of crying and screaming, running around, making me embarrassed. Touch your butts and think about it. Who's the coward here? Damn it. I've never seen such a shameless person. In terms of glib talk, these old men who were used to being high above were no match for Yu Qianqiu. Ji Fenglu's face turned red, and he could not say a word. The cultivators around him, including those who were scolded, all had ashen faces. No one made a sound. Although Yu Qianqiu's words were a little unreasonable, it was undeniable that it was the truth. Who here dared to rush into the misty forest to find Yu Qianqiu to settle the score? He might really be sitting there swaggering, but no one could do anything to him. This was really unbearable. Third brother Xian looked left and right in the crowd. Today, he finally met someone that he was convinced of. This brat relied on his own strength to make such a large group of people suffer. In terms of fighting and eloquence, he could fight thousands of people alone. What a talent! Third brother Xian could not help but sigh at his master's wisdom. He never participated in the disputes of the cultivation world, and only cared about saving lives. If he was like the other countries and brought people here today, not only would he suffer, he would also be very angry. Everyone, I, the world's #1 expert below the soul formation stage, am sitting here. If anyone is not convinced, feel free to come and challenge me. One-on-one or all at once, I will take you all on. In the colorful fog, Yu Qianqiu's infuriating and mocking words came again. Chapter 520. What a joke. The dozens of disciples in front of him hadn't even turned into dirty water yet. They didn't cry out in pain or feel any discomfort, dying so mysteriously. Who dared to barge in now to die? But what was inconceivable was, why was Yu Qianqiu, this guy, talking cheerfully and wittily inside, completely fine? No one made a sound in reply, letting Yu Qianqiu mock and ridicule inside. Whoever spoke back was just asking for it. Ji Fenglu was a very good example. Right now he was gnashing his teeth in anger, but there was nothing he could do. Yu Qianqiu scolded for a long time until his mouth was dry, but no one paid attention to him. He couldn't be bothered to scold anymore, and started to split his attention to examine this mysterious misty forest. Hearing the scolding inside stop, Ji Fenglu's expression changed. Crap! Misty forest is so big. What if he runs away from somewhere else? Run! Where can he run to? Bai Meng said with a gloomy face. Unless he hides and never shows his face, he can forget about escaping the pursuit of the entire cultivation world for the rest of his life. Everyone nodded their heads repeatedly. They all felt that Yu Qianqiu had taken advantage of the dense fog forest. In addition, he had been caught unprepared by that mysterious magic art. If he had been surrounded elsewhere, with a few more experts attacking him at the same time, he would definitely not have had a good time. Don't worry. Yu Qianqiu's voice came again. I will definitely not run away from somewhere else. Tonight, I will break out from here. All of you prepare to die. I won't talk to you guys for now. I'm going to take a stroll around first. I'll come back to settle the score with you guys at night. His tone was abnormally arrogant, practically treating all the cultivators in the world as nothing. Ji Fenglu was so angry that he kept shouting. His hands formed a circle, sucking up a large pile of gravel from the ground, and fiercely pushing it towards misty forest. A large pile of densely packed gravel shot in with a whistling sound in the mist. Yu Qianqiu was just about to turn around to look around, when he heard the whistling sound of the wind behind him. He jumped in fright, thinking that the other party had launched an attack. Without another word, thousands of black flame-flying swords flashed out, and destroyed all the things that came at them. The reason why the fog here was thicker was because he had used the water art to release the fog. This was to better control this area and avoid being ambushed without him knowing. Therefore, no matter how many stones were shot at him, they were all shattered. When he found that all the stones on the ground were stones, he felt like he had been tricked. He immediately cursed again. Which shameless old thing actually threw stones at people? Do you still have any morals? Ji Fenglu was infuriated once again. Bai Meng instead raised a hand and pressed it against his shoulder, his gaze lighting up as he stared at the gravel covering the field. The reason why no one dared to attack the fog was that they did not understand the power of this seven-colored fog. They were afraid that the magic tools and magic treasures in their hands would be destroyed if they came into contact with the poison. However, they did not expect that they could borrow the gravel in this field. Bai Meng waved at everyone and pointed at the gravel in the field. He then pointed at Ji Fenglu, indicating for everyone to copy what he had done just now. Everyone's face lit up. Without a word, they swept up a large amount of gravel on the ground and fiercely pushed it in the direction where Yu Qianqiu's curses came from. In an instant, the earth-shattering gravel shot into the fog with a whooshing sound. When the rain of gravel rushed into the fog, Yu Qianqiu immediately guessed what it was. So many? He was a bit dumbfounded. F***ck. He hurriedly jumped into a trench at the side. Above his head were the shadows of locusts that were as dense as rain. That sound was truly frightening. Don't look at it as just rocks. There were quite a few tribulation stage experts among them. When those rocks attacked, they could casually break through a wall. Killing ordinary mortals was like cutting vegetables. Even if a cultivator was hit, they would not feel good. When there was no more movement, just as he jumped out, he immediately heard an earth-shattering sound surging towards him. Thus he jumped back again. When there was no more movement again, he immediately jumped out and flew away on his flying sword. As he turned around he roared, "A bunch of shameless people, just you wait." Everyone rolled up the gravel again. Although they knew that this wouldn't do anything to him, it was also a way to vent their anger. Even old Xian, who was at the side, couldn't help but join in the fun. That brat was really too arrogant. He chuckled there. Hearing that flustered and exasperated voice gradually fading away, thousands of people laughed loudly. They finally let out a sigh of relief. However, when they saw the corpses all over the field, they immediately couldn't laugh anymore. With such dismembered corpses, they couldn't even tell whose they belonged to. Even if they wanted to collect them, they couldn't. The leader of the group thought about it and called for the disciples of the sect to dig many deep pits on the ground. The surrounding corpses were swept into the pits and then directly buried. They had no choice but to do this. No matter what, they were from the same sect. They couldn't let their fellow disciples' corpses be exposed in the wilderness. As for the storage pouches, they tried their best to identify which sect they belonged to. If they couldn't, then whoever picked it up could keep it. After flying away on his flying sword, Yu Qianqiu stopped in front of the vague shadow of a dense forest. He was a little hesitant to go in. He kept saying that this was the misty forest, but he didn't see a single tree in the periphery. Only here did he see one. There was also that colorful fog. In this desolate and boundless desert, even though the wind was blowing continuously, it couldn't blow away the fog that enveloped this place. It really made people feel a little uneasy. He had already experienced the power of this colorful fog. When he first came in, he thought that since he had taken the Rui pill, he wouldn't be afraid of any poison. However, after a while, he immediately felt that something was wrong. Although it didn't hurt or itch, he felt that his consciousness was gradually blurring. His whole body was numb, and he couldn't even move a finger. Subconsciously, he shouted that something was wrong. He was too careless. He was going to die here today. Unexpectedly, at the critical moment, his abdomen warmed up, and a warm current flowed through his whole body. His consciousness also gradually became clear, and he was slowly able to move. However, he felt that there was something in his body that seemed to be spinning silk from a cocoon. It was extracting something from every part of his body, and it was flowing towards his dantian. When he looked inside, he found that the head of the nascent soul in his dantian was shining with a golden light. It gave off the feeling of the Vairocana Buddha, and it was very solemn. Strands of colorful threads flowed into his dantian, and were then inhaled by the nascent soul through its nose. Yu Qianqiu suddenly realized that the golden bead that had sunk into the nascent soul's body had a miraculous effect. Without a doubt, those colorful threads should be the colorful fog that had invaded his body. Even the Rui pill couldn't cure the poison, but it was actually absorbed by the nascent soul. Thinking about it, he really had to thank this golden bead. At every critical moment, it would always help him turn misfortunes into blessings. It was very magical, and he didn't know what it was. However, there was no doubt that it was a good treasure. Looking around, it was quiet, and the colorful fog was slowly drifting. Behind such bright colors, there was a sense of eeriness and an indescribable strangeness. Perhaps it had something to do with the dead silence. He walked slowly and stopped beside a big tree. This tree was completely black, and it had branches but no leaves. It was a bare tree, and it seemed that these trees had died a long time ago. Looking at the big trees on the side, including those in the dense forest, they were also all black. There were almost no weeds growing on the ground, and it was also pitch black. On the contrary, there were some hairy things that looked like grass under each tree. He remembered that third brother Xian once said that his master had come here to collect poisonous grass, but he didn't see any other grass. Could it be this thing? He wanted to collect some to study, and see if he could poison someone to death. Maybe it would be useful in the future. But after thinking about it, he gave up. He didn't understand these things, and when he had the chance to ask third brother Xian's master, he could come back whenever he wanted. For now, he should try not to touch anything here. Should he go in and take a look? Yu Qianqiu hesitated for a while. If it wasn't for the golden bead, he would have been poisoned to death. If he encountered something more powerful, he really didn't know if he could handle it. Looking inside his dantian again, he saw that his nascent soul was still absorbing the colorful threads. He didn't know how long it would take. It was just absorbing and not spitting. Wouldn't it be stuffed to death? Woo! Woo! From the depths of the forest came an unknown sound, echoing in the empty black forest. This sound was the only sound left in the silence, and it made people's hair stand on end. Yu Qianqiu carefully looked around, and both his ears were almost pricked up, trying to hear where the sound came from. However, it was difficult to distinguish, and he could only guess that it came from the depths of the forest, or maybe very far away. The sound suddenly disappeared. Damn it! If I can't poison to death, how can I be scared by a broken forest? If something is wrong, I'll just run. What's there to be afraid of? Yu Qianqiu coughed twice, and his voice echoed in the forest. He took out a black flame flying sword from his sleeve, and jumped on it. Then he waved his hand and pointed around, and recited loudly, "Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue and purple, who holds the colorful ribbon and dances in the sky. After the rain comes the setting sun, and the mountains pass in waves." After he finished reciting the poem, he suddenly felt emboldened. He thought to himself, in this kind of situation, only a poem by a great person, who had defeated all kinds of evil spirits, could boost his courage. Forget about those bullsh *TAMN signs. Then his whole body surged with black flame to protect himself, and a few dozen black flame flying swords and blue flame flying swords flashed out to accompany him. When he felt that it was safe, he rode his sword and flew at a constant speed into the depths of the forest. The colorful fog in front of him was getting thicker and thicker, and his vision was getting worse and worse. He almost couldn't see anything in front of him. Yu Qianqiu slowed down, and let a few blue flame flying swords lead the way. He felt that the terrain was getting higher, and the black trees were getting fewer and fewer. It seemed that he was climbing to the top of a mountain. Damn it! What's in here? Yu Qianqiu didn't know how long he had been flying. Just as he was muttering to himself, the scene in front of him suddenly opened up, and he came out of the colorful fog. Yu Qianqiu looked around in surprise, and found that he was already at the top of a mountain in the shape of a basin. The whole mountain was like a huge basin, and he could still see the colorful fog around him. But the inside of the basin was clear, and he could see everything clearly. Below him was a huge depression, and this depression was not simple. It was actually all golden, and he didn't know if it was made of brass or gold. In the middle of the flat yellow metal ground, there was a wide platform that was tens of meters tall, and it was also golden. It looked like an altar. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.